941. 5 Heavenly Lords, Setbacks. After breaking through the obstructions of the heavenly venerates, the sky-patrolling arrow giant net instantly transformed back into nearly 10,000 silver-white thin arrows. Then, they rapidly flew towards the various state territories of the Five Old Ones Society. Despite many Five Old Ones Society cultivators attempting to intercept them, the sheer number of these sky-patrolling arrows was overwhelming. Moreover, each sky-patrolling arrow possessed the power of a combined Dao strike. The event unfolded so suddenly that even the combined Dao cultivators of the Five Old Ones Society found it difficult to intercept them. Thus, the 10,000 sky-patrolling arrows scattered like fireworks, transforming into countless different trajectories, all landing upon the land of the Five Old Ones Society. Rumble. Even through the heavenly mystery mirror, Li Fan could feel the immense tremors coming from afar. However, the sky-patrolling arrow giant net, launched at the cost of the lives of all 33 immortal chosen by the Myriad Immortals Alliance, was not just meant for bombardment. After a brief moment of silence, from each point where a sky-patrolling arrow landed, tens of thousands of silver threads suddenly burst forth, forming a massive light cocoon that was wide at the bottom and narrow at the top, resembling a bizarre pincer. Deeply rooted into the depths of the earth. From the very top of those light cocoons, an extremely thin thread shot out towards the location of the Myriad Immortals Alliance. In an instant, it traversed hundreds of millions of miles. Nearly 10,000 thin lines converged in the territory of the Myriad Immortals Alliance. These changes occurred in the blink of an eye, before even the heavenly venerate Dharma idols in the sky had completely shattered. Li Fan watched this scene in the heavenly mystery mirror, and even with his experience from multiple reincarnations, he did not know what the Myriad Immortals Alliance intended to do. However, his intuition vaguely gave him a premonition of disaster. Under the gaze of all, it was as if a towering giant was forcefully pulling at the Myriad Immortals Alliance. Another huge roar erupted. The tens of thousands of light cocoons deeply embedded in the earth of the Five Old Ones Society were like tenacious ropes. As if pulling something, guiding it to twist towards the location of the Myriad Immortals Alliance. The roaring continued, as if some major change was happening in the world. And the 5 beams of light confronting the remaining heavenly venerate Dharma idols also seemed to become more urgent. But strangely, their offensive seemed to weaken for some reason, allowing the heavenly venerate Dharma idols, which were originally on the verge of complete collapse, to actually last longer. The unease in Li Fan's heart grew stronger and stronger. Upon careful examination, it was not about himself. Rather, it was more like a biological instinct, like how sentient beings would feel uneasy before a natural disaster. This is, in the heavenly mystery mirror, the Five Old Ones Society seemed to finally react. A large number of cultivators were dispatched to attack those giant light cocoons. But these light cocoons seemed to be non-existent, and the vast majority of cultivators' attacks missed. Only those leading cultivators, who seemed to be at the combined Dao level, slightly distorted the threads ejected from the light cocoons with their attacks. But this light net covering the entire Five Old Ones Society region was extremely tough, and the slight bending did not affect the overall situation at all. The changes were still happening steadily. The light representing the 5 heavenly venerates in the sky also became increasingly dim. It was as if the power of these eternal heavenly venerates was being restricted in some way. A flash of inspiration suddenly struck Li Fan's mind. Like lightning splitting through the fog, the scene in his vision changed. The light cocoons and thin lines were no longer connected to the earth of the Five Old Ones Society, but to a giant net. A giant net representing the laws of heaven and earth. Li Fan finally understood. Each heavenly venerate of the 5 Old Ones has their own territory. In these areas, their reversed laws of heaven and earth are more solid than in the outside world. Even the weaker ones would lose the effect of their reversed laws of heaven and earth once they left this area. These places could be said to be the places where these heavenly venerates achieved enlightenment. And now, the Myriad Immortals Alliance, through some method, was actually causing the inherent laws of heaven and earth in these places to be distorted through those light cocoons. It was like the pillars supporting a bridge being bent. Although the bridge would not collapse immediately, it would uncontrollably sway. Reflecting in reality, the authority of the 5 heavenly venerates was inevitably affected at this moment. It won't affect the strength of the eternal heavenly venerates, but it can temporarily deprive them of absolute control over the 5 Old Ones Society's territory. Li Fan stood up, a look of surprise on his face. He didn't expect that this method could be used to fight against the eternal heavenly venerates. The distortion of the laws of heaven and earth is time-limited. Those 5 heavenly venerates will definitely find a way to slowly eliminate this influence. But before that, it is an excellent opportunity for the Myriad Immortals Alliance. As if echoing Li Fan's guess, portals suddenly appeared in the sky above the 5 Old Ones Society. A large number of black-clothed cultivators flew out of the portals. Expressionless, filled with killing intent, they began to sweep through the various regions of the 5 Old Ones Society. Heavenly Art Warriors, Li Fan was no stranger to these elite soldiers trained by the era. Their powerful combat strength was as strong as ever. The incident happened too suddenly. In a situation of letterlessness, the 5 Old Ones Society had no time to organize a proper resistance. Fighting on their own, they were quickly defeated one by the black-clothed cultivators. The offensive of the Myriad Immortals Alliance, like heavy dark clouds, swept over the 5 Old Ones Society in an unstoppable manner. In front of the heavenly mystery mirror, the cultivators who were originally watching the show went crazy. What is this? What is this? Is this still the Myriad Immortals Alliance I know? The Immortal Alliance has been hiding so deeply. The various combat readiness forces are truly powerful beyond imagination. I say, is there a possibility? I'm just saying a possibility. Are these scenes actually fabrications created by the heavenly mystery mirror? After all, no matter what, the other party has been confronting us for thousands of years. They were defeated so easily. I don't quite believe it. What fellow Taoist said is true, I also find it very unreasonable. Is there any daring person who can personally go to the 5 Old Ones Society to take a look? After all, seeing is believing. I have long known a secret route to the 5 Old Ones Society. Fellow Taoists, please wait a moment, I will go and verify it myself. Bah, you traitors, still talking tough here. I really want to see your faces of grief after the 5 Old Ones Society is completely captured. In front of the heavenly mystery mirror, the myriad aspects of humanity were on display. But the battle between the Myriad Immortals Alliance and the 5 Old Ones Society did not shift according to their will. The number of black-clothed cultivators seemed endless, and they were still flying out of the portals continuously. And without command, they were also exceptionally tacit. After leaving the portals, they went about their business in a decisive and efficient manner. Occupying strongholds, building fortifications, steadily advancing forward. They did not kill them all, but instead escorted all the captured 5 Old Ones Society cultivators away through the portals. 942. Strong men emerge from desperate situations. This move is truly brilliant. The power of the 5 celestial venerables will indeed recover soon. By then, before the realm of longevity, all the established advantages will be reduced to ashes in an instant. But if, before that, all the members of the 5 Old Ones are captured, what's left for the 5 celestial venerables is just a vast, empty land. Although he doesn't know much about the realm of longevity, Li Fan is certain that even the most ordinary cultivator is useful to these 5 celestial venerables. Perhaps reducing some won't have much impact. But if he controls the realm, and the cultivators, even the mortals, are all gone, it would definitely be a major blow to them. Could it be that the 5 Old Ones of this world are really going to be defeated like this? Li Fan couldn't help but think. In the following days, the war progressed smoothly. The scales of victory continued to tip towards the Myriad Immortals Alliance. But after all, it was a behemoth that had been passed down for thousands of years. When it was about to be forced into a desperate situation, the 5 Old Ones finally burst out with powerful resistance. The image in the celestial mystery mirror suddenly switched to a sky. From within an oval, blurry doorway, a team of cultivators flew out in unison. They were clearly not from the Myriad Immortals Alliance. But their clothing style was also different from that of the current 5 Old Ones. Their clothes were uniformly embroidered with the same profound patterns. Looking at the neat black-clothed ranks not far away, these cultivators all showed eager and excited smiles on their faces. This is the Supreme Sect. Li Fan frowned slightly, looking at the somewhat familiar sect symbol. The image in the celestial mystery mirror changed again. Doorways appeared one after another, and those ancient sects that were said to have been destroyed actually reappeared in the world at this time and joined the battlefield. Not only that, the image in the celestial mystery mirror focused again, recording an incredible scene. A female cultivator wearing white tights, with a graceful figure, was seen somewhere. Facing a tightly closed golden gate in the void ahead, exuding an ancient and sacred aura, she slowly kowtowed. Then, the gate opened with a bang, projecting a dazzling golden light. In the disappearance of the light, what appeared in the mirror were more than a dozen figures exactly the same as this white-clothed female cultivator. Their appearances were completely identical, only their age and strength had slight differences. It was as if, white-clothed female cultivators of different ages. Without saying a word, these white-clothed female cultivators sped away into the distance. This is the Immortal Sect Armory. Li Fan's eyes flashed. The information he had previously collected about the Immortal Sect Armory flooded his mind. The Immortal Sect Armory was an existence similar to the Celestial Mystery Mirror in the Myriad Immortals Alliance. There, various techniques, classics, and treasures from the ancient immortal sects, as vast as the sea, could be exchanged by cultivators at will. The resources required were not contribution points, but soul points. Li Fan knew before that there were also real phantasms of many ancient sects in the Immortal Sect Armory. What created the real phantasms was a power extremely similar to the fallen immortal realm. There, the 5 Old Ones cultivators could travel to many extinct ancient sects. There were still many images of ancient cultivators in the sects. Most of them did not have their own intelligence, but were just pure shells. But in actual combat, the power between their gestures was almost the same as a real person. The 5 Old Ones cultivators could consume soul points to continuously spar with these ancient cultivators to improve their combat power. And in the Immortal Sect Armory, all injuries would not affect the body in reality, but would only cause slight injuries to the soul. What's even better was that this kind of soul injury could also be healed by consuming soul points. Theoretically speaking, if there were enough soul points, even a mortal who had just started cultivating could become extremely powerful in one battle after another. These cultivators who have been summoned are the projections of themselves left in the Immortal Sect Armory by consuming soul points. Li Fan instantly understood the origin of these clone-like cultivators. Obviously, Li Fan's guess was not wrong. Similar scenes happened everywhere in the 5 Old Ones. As the golden ancient gates continued to project projections, the remaining resistance of the 5 Old Ones instantly expanded more than 10 times. Moreover, these cultivators who could leave projections in the Immortal Sect Armory were all veterans. Their combat experience was extremely rich, and their appearance caused great damage to the Myriad Immortals Alliance. Moreover, it seemed that as long as the original body did not die, after a period of rest, they could consume soul power to summon their projections from the Immortal Sect Armory again. It was almost equivalent to being able to resurrect infinitely. In this way, the numerical advantage of the Myriad Immortals Alliance's black-clothed cultivators was also offset. The Immortal Alliance's attack slowed down. And not long after the stalemate appeared, another force joined the battle. The image in the Celestial Mystery Mirror changed. When it seemed to be disturbed by something, the image displayed in the mirror was somewhat blurred. It seemed to be a continuous city built on the firmament. The cultivators in the city were all in a deep sleep. In a slight tremor, the cultivators all woke up. There was no confusion from suddenly waking up after a long sleep, but their faces were full of anger after their sweet dreams were disturbed. They cursed in their mouths, and without seeing them make any movements, the clothes on their bodies turned into full coverage, liquid metal-like battle armor. They flew towards the battlefield. The image in the Celestial Mystery Mirror suddenly switched. It seemed to be forced to interrupt. That place is. Li Fan was a little stunned. The land of carefree bliss. The land of carefree bliss was the most mysterious place in the 5 Old Ones territory. It was the dreamland of all cultivators, and only those who passed the test could enter it. And once they went to the land of carefree bliss, few returned. And in that fleeting glance just now, Li Fan also saw many interesting things in that illusory city in the sky. For example, high-rise buildings and neon lights like modern cities. For example, aerial roads connecting many buildings like rainbows. For example, flying shuttles constantly shuttling and flying in the city. The power of carefree bliss almost covers the entire Xuanwang realm. The carefree celestial venerable should also be the strongest among the 5 of them. Interesting. That place was very similar to the future cultivation world scene that Li Fan had seen in the era. If possible, I could use an incarnation to travel there. Li Fan had a feeling that he should be able to find something interesting from the land of carefree bliss. The addition of the land of carefree bliss cultivators completely reversed the battle situation. Although their cultivation was not very good, the magic weapons on their bodies were really powerful. The metal magic clothes could almost absorb most of the attacks, and then reflect them back. Moreover, each cultivator carried almost endless energy beams. In an instant, they unfolded behind them. Then they began to bombard the myriad Immortals Alliance cultivators. 943. Wars are stopped because of profit. These strangely dressed and equipped cultivators were different from the projections summoned from the Immortal sect's armory. They possessed no combat skills whatsoever, relying entirely on the sharpness of their weapons to gain the upper hand in battle. But these cultivators had a peculiar characteristic. That was their fearlessness in the face of death. If their companions were killed, they would not feel sadness or pain, but rather expressions of mockery and laughter would appear on their faces. Even when their own deaths were imminent, they would not be afraid. Only some regret and unwillingness remained. Under the combined force of multiple resistance groups, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance's offensive was held back. And there were signs that the battle lines were being pushed back. At this time, the decision made by the 10,000 Immortals Alliance was somewhat unexpected. They didn't stubbornly persist in their attack, but rather retreated when it was advantageous. Just like when they came, they covered each other and retreated in an orderly manner. The image on the heavenly mystery mirror suddenly cut off at this point. This sudden reversal instantly aroused the dissatisfaction of the cultivators watching the live broadcast in front of the heavenly mystery mirror, who were very excited. That's it, they retreated after a little setback. There's still a fight to be had. Why retreat? Are they so afraid of death? If you don't dare to fight, I do. Let me go to the battlefield. Who gave the order to retreat? They should be killed. ... The crowd was excited, but it couldn't change the decision on the battlefield. That day, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance issued another announcement. It stated that the battles of the past few days were a display of their own strength and a small warning to the 5 Old Ones. The previous promise remained unchanged. If the 5 Old Ones were willing to hand over the Immortal Alliance's legacy treasure, then everything could still be discussed. If the 5 Old Ones remained stubborn, then the 10,000 Immortals Alliance might come to their door every now and then to plunder. Whether to fight or make peace was entirely up to the 5 Old Ones to decide. Obviously, this announcement was a blatant threat. In the past, the 5 Old Ones would have simply dismissed it and might have even issued a similar announcement, responding tit for tat with sarcasm and ridicule. But things were different now. The 10,000 Immortals Alliance's surprise attack had really frightened them. Other methods were easy to deal with. Only the giant net of sky-patrolling arrows used in conjunction with the Celestial Venerable's Dharma image could actually affect the 5 eternal Celestial Venerables. It should be known that unlike the Dharma-transmitting Celestial Venerable, who was basically just a legend in the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, the 5 Celestial Venerables were real and ruled and managed the 5 Old Ones. And from time to time, Celestial Venerable edicts would be issued. It could be said that the 5 Celestial Venerables had absolute authority in the hearts of the 5 Old Ones cultivators. So, one could imagine the shock in their hearts when they discovered that the 10,000 Immortals Alliance's weapons could actually harm the 5 Celestial Venerables, who were like gods. It was understandable that they were caught off guard, struck by the 10,000 Immortals Alliance's blitzkrieg, and driven straight in. Although they eventually reacted and launched a counterattack, temporarily repelling the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. However, in these days when the Celestial Venerable's authority had not fully recovered, chaos continued to spread within the 5 Old Ones. Those cultivators who were accustomed to the existence of the Celestial Venerable's laws were exposed for the first time to the true Xuanwang world without the principles of the Celestial Venerables. The impact on them was shocking. For example, when the cultivators of the Kingdom of Truth suddenly discovered that they could lie. In an environment where the entire population subconsciously believed that there were no lies in the world, the power of lies was devastating. After the cultivators tasted the benefits of lies, lies spread through the former Kingdom of Truth at a terrifying rate. It was foreseeable that this chaos would not subside on its own until the power of the heavenly race was restored. The strong are respected. Now, the strength of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance could inflict a fatal blow on the 5 Old Ones. Therefore, the 5 Old Ones had no choice but to submit. More importantly, the 5 Old Ones did not know that all 33 Immortal Chosen who could trigger the Celestial Venerable's Dharma image had been sacrificed. From their perspective, those Celestial Venerable Dharma images, like the sky-patrolling arrows, were forces that could be used again at any time. Therefore, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance's threat was something they had to face. 2 days later, an envoy consisting of more than 10 5 Old Ones cultivators arrived at the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. In name, they were there for friendly consultation, but in reality, they were seeking peace and humiliation. Moreover, they actually brought the so-called Immortal Alliance legacy treasure. This made the 10,000 Immortals Alliance's cultivators laugh for a long time. The entire negotiation process lasted for 7 days. The public did not know the specific content of the agreement reached. But obviously, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance was very satisfied with the price paid by the 5 Old Ones. They no longer mentioned the matter of seeking justice. After the 5 Old Ones' envoy left in disgrace, a large-scale rewarding of meritorious deeds began. The black-clothed cultivators were not mentioned. Instead, the commander-in-chief of this campaign against the 5 Old Ones was introduced to the public at length. The Dharma transmitter, Zhang. The sky-patrolling arrows and the celestial Venerable's Dharma image, which played a crucial role in the surprise attack, were all planned by him. This was the first time that the Dharma transmitter had appeared in the public eye of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. Li Fan looked at the widely circulated figure, a thin middle-aged man who looked unremarkable. Only the goatee on his chin was the most conspicuous. Strange, the usually low-key Dharma transmitter actually chose to expose himself. Li Fan frowned slightly, somewhat puzzled. This had never happened in previous reincarnation experiences. Li Fan guessed that it might be related to Mo Rubin, who had possessed the young Dharma transmitter. There was also a power struggle between the Dharma transmitters. Mo Rubin tried to control the heavenly mystery mirror through the formation. Perhaps it triggered a sense of crisis in some people. Therefore, he established his position by making contributions in this campaign. But Li Fan felt faintly that something was wrong. The sky-patrolling arrows and the Immortal Chosen's plan had been laid out long ago. Obviously, it had been planned for a long time. Mo Rubin's disguise as a Dharma transmitter was only a recent event. Or, was it really for that so-called Immortal Alliance legacy treasure? Li Fan suddenly focused his attention on this excuse that all the cultivators of the Immortal Alliance thought it was. If it's true, what is it that makes the 10,000 Immortals Alliance go to such great lengths? It seems that it's time for our Myriad Worlds Association to take action again. Thinking this, Li Qing, Li Fan's clone, felt something and left the spirit wood world again, heading straight for the 5 Old Ones' territory. The sky-patrolling arrows had been completely consumed, and the method of secretly leaving marks on the border's protective formation had also been cracked by Li Fan using the Terminus disintegration disc. Li Qing encountered no trouble along the way. The 10,000 Immortals Alliance, having just won a great victory, was obviously also relaxing its vigilance. Li Qing easily broke through the defensive line and sneaked into the 5 Old Ones. Several states on the border had been looted by the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. Scanning with divine sense, not even half a living person could be found. She cast the secret technique for contacting people along the way, heading towards the 5 Old Ones' hinterland. It was not until she crossed 5 states that cultivators gradually appeared. 944. The soul bones of the Dharma transmitters. However, the 5 Elders Council's spy network also seemed to be significantly affected. No one came to receive her. Li Qing had no choice but to continue deeper, until she reached an area called Fanqing Prefecture, where she finally received a response. However, after connecting the communication, the other side remained silent. They were waiting for Li Qing to speak first. I am a member of the Myriad Realms Union, and I have an urgent matter that requires me to contact your superior, Li Qing transmitted. Myriad Realms Union, what is that? The other side's voice sounded like they had just woken up from a dream. The voice sounded very young. After a burst of chaotic noise, the person who answered the call quickly changed to a calm, middle-aged cultivator. Fellow Taoist, please forgive us. Nowadays, everywhere is in chaos. Many key figures in the organization have disappeared in the Great War, their lives uncertain. Therefore, we cannot currently confirm your identity. He directly rejected Li Qing's request for a meeting. After a brief silence, Li Qing said, the more this is the case, the more critical intelligence is needed. The information I have can turn the tide of the 5 Elders Council's crisis. Such a great achievement, are you willing to miss it for nothing? Now that positions are vacant, if you can rise through meritorious service. Moreover, the 10,000 Immortals Alliance now has an absolute advantage. Are you still worried that I am a spy sent by them? Li Qing's tone was full of sarcasm, and her short words directly broke through the other party's psychological defenses. The sound of breathing on the other side suddenly became rapid. However, the communication was temporarily interrupted. Li Qing was not worried, but patiently waited with confidence. Sure enough, after half a day, the middle-aged cultivator took the initiative to contact her. Where shall we meet? Let's make it clear first, I came here privately. If the information you speak of is unreliable, I will pretend I never met you. Li Qing smiled slightly and told the other party her location. Before long, a black stream of light flew from the horizon. A cultivator completely wrapped in metal armor, whose face could not be seen clearly, quietly appeared in front of Li Qing. This attire is not bad, Li Qing commented. The armor worn by the middle-aged cultivator was exactly the same as the equipment of the cultivators who flew out of the floating city in the sky. Only at this time will the land of carefree bliss be willing to take out these good things. If they hadn't been hiding them all along, how could we have been defeated so miserably? The middle-aged cultivator replied briefly, his tone full of complaints. As he spoke, a transparent ripple surged from the armor on his body. It spread outwards, forming a circular barrier that enveloped the two of them. Isolating the inside from the outside, the scene outside the barrier suddenly became blurred. All right, it's safe here. What is the important information you spoke of? The middle-aged man asked, staring at Li Qing with some nervousness. Li Qing smiled sarcastically. I said, it's heavyweight intelligence that can turn the tide of the war. How could I tell you so easily? The middle-aged cultivator suddenly became anxious. Then what do you want? At the very least, I want to see someone who can make decisions before I speak, Li Qing said decisively. If you don't speak, how will I know if you are lying? At this sensitive moment, I'm taking someone with an unknown identity to see the higher-ups. Am I tired of living? The middle-aged cultivator on the other side was obviously not responsible for intelligence or espionage work before. He had basically no composure and said angrily. Seeing this, Li Qing didn't want to get entangled with this person anymore and said directly, our Myriad Realms Union knows how to break the 10,000 Immortals Alliance's celestial venerable Dharma idol. What do you think? What? The middle-aged cultivator was first stunned, and then directly exclaimed. Is this true? His voice trembled slightly. I am here, waiting for someone who can speak to come, Li Qing said coldly. The middle-aged cultivator lowered his head and thought for a moment, and finally gritted his teeth. Without any fluctuations of divine sense, he completed the notification. In the face of this heavyweight information, the Five Elders' Council finally showed a trace of its original efficiency. In the time it takes to brew half a cup of tea, hundreds of black streams of light flew to this place. All of them were wearing metal armor, surrounding Li Qing. The leader was actually a female cultivator. She walked directly to Li Qing, friend from the Myriad Realms Union. Li Qing nodded, confirming her identity. My name is Qing Yang, and I am responsible for the reconstruction of the post-war intelligence system. Come with me. Surrounded by hundreds of cultivators, Li Qing came to an underground fortress. Her expression remained unchanged throughout the entire process. This made the people of the Five Elders Council trust her a lot. This underground fortress was obviously newly built to cope with the 10,000 Immortals Alliance's attack. Arriving at the deepest secret room, Qing Yang ordered the others to leave and faced Li Qing alone. Anything you want to say, you can say it now. Qing Yang's voice did not carry any emotion. Miss Qing Yang doesn't even dare to show her face. It's hard for me to believe you. Li Qing shook her head with a light smile. After a brief silence, the black metal armor faded away, and Qing Yang revealed her true appearance. Her appearance was not outstanding, the kind that would be inconspicuous in a crowd. However, Li Qing keenly noticed that there was an indifferent disregard for life in the other party's eyes. Li Qing carefully examined her for a long time before slowly speaking, use the information of the immortal chosen to exchange for the information we want. Okay, Qing Yang nodded in agreement. What do you want? Qing Yang asked very directly. What exactly is the Immortal Alliance secret treasure that the 10,000 Immortals Alliance wants? Seeming very surprised by this question, Qing Yang was stunned on the spot. I don't know, but this should not be a secret, I'll ask. The metal stream of light once again covered Qing Yang's face. When she showed her face again, her face was full of surprise and uncertainty. The information exceeds my authority. Now she was a little uneasy. Sorry, wait a moment. Qing Yang hurriedly left the secret room. Li Qing fell into deep thought. Sure enough, this seemingly inexcusable Immortal Alliance legacy treasure actually exists. What treasure did the 10,000 Immortals Alliance have back then that is worth remembering for thousands of years? Just as Li Qing was thinking, Qing Yang quickly returned. The expression on her face was a little strange. She gave the answer directly. The so-called Immortal Alliance legacy treasure is some remnant souls and bones of the founding members of the Immortal Alliance. Back then, the Immortal sects besieged and suppressed the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. In order to set an example, they extracted the souls of those defeated and stubborn Dharma transmitters and tortured them day and night. What was commonplace back then was announced to the world. Now it seems a bit disgraceful, so it is kept secret. In the Spirit Wood realm, Li Fan sensed the answer heard by the clone, and his eyes narrowed slightly. He remembered that in the 115th life, the 5 Elders Council raided the 10,000 Immortals Island, seemingly to excavate the remains of the founding Dharma transmitters. 945. Victory or defeat is unknown. In different timelines, both sides have fought fiercely over the remains of the first law transmitter. It seems that besides symbolic meaning, these remains should have other uses. In an instant, Li Fan had the idea of searching the 10,000 Immortals Island. But he quickly suppressed it. Although it seems that the 10,000 Immortals Island in the Kongyan Sea is just a remote state city. The highest is only the nascent soul stage cultivator stationed there, and the current Li Fan can easily suppress it. But in addition to burying the remains of the first law transmitter, the 10,000 Immortals Island also suppresses the nether tunnel below, suspected to be the source of the weirdness in this profound yellow realm. Gongsun Shishuan, who is in charge of supervising the weirdness in the Heavenly Mystery Hall, is definitely not as simple as he seems on the surface. Wanting to excavate under the eyes of the 10,000 Immortals Alliance. Actually, it's not impossible. As long as the water is stirred up again. There is also something strange. If you really want the remains, just go to 10,000 Immortals Island to dig them up. Why do you have to get the batch that the 5 Elders Association snatched away? Li Fan flashed a few doubts in his mind. It seems that I need to connect with Mo Rubin as soon as possible. The scene returned to the 5 Elders Association, to Li Qing's clone. Remains. The 10,000 Immortals Alliance is making such a big fuss, just for this. Li Qing asked the same question as the main body. Yes, Qing Yang affirmed again. In the soul-crushing disc, there are a total of 56 remnant souls and 103 remains. However, after so many years of torment, they have become completely crazy and should not have any value. Qing Yang glanced at Li Qing intentionally or unintentionally. There was no expression fluctuation on Li Qing's face. He pretended to think for a moment, and then said, "Since you are so straightforward, then I will be frank about some things. All 33 immortal chosen ones are dead. The 10,000 Immortals Alliance should not be able to summon the celestial Venerable Dharma idol in a short time. Moreover, the last batch of Immortal Chosen Ones was selected through the massive Immortal Alliance examination. If you want to replenish the Immortal Chosen Ones again, I am afraid it will require a vacuum period. This may be your opportunity to counterattack." Li Qing did not speak too definitively, but just quietly provoked. Qing Yang's expression was very calm when he heard this. But the change in her eyes revealed the shock in her heart at this moment. I wonder when the 5 celestial venerables will be able to fully recover their power. Li Qing took the opportunity to inquire. Qing Yang shook her head and remained silent. It's a pity, I was thinking about renewing my relationship with one heart celestial venerable. Li Qing sighed. Qing Yang's gaze suddenly condensed, falling on Li Qing. Not caring about the substantive killing intent, Li Qing cupped his hands. My mission has been completed, so I won't bother you any longer. I hope we will have the opportunity to cooperate in the future. Li Qing prepared to leave, and Qing Yang did not stop him. Before leaving, they exchanged new contact methods, and Li Qing turned into a sword light and flew away. My lord, this person's behavior is suspicious, are you just letting him go? A black shadow suddenly emerged from behind Qing Yang and asked. Although this person is quite strong, I am sure I can keep him here. Qing Yang stared at the sky, until the sword light completely disappeared. She said lightly, he is not our enemy yet, so don't worry about him. How is the poison seed plan progressing? The black shadow said in a deep voice, we still can't contact them. The 10,000 Immortals Alliance doesn't know where they have taken our residence. Continue tracking. A trace of coldness flashed in Qing Yang's eyes. Since they dare to reach out, they must be prepared to be beheaded. Yes. A trace of excitement was revealed in the black shadow's tone. Li Qing didn't know what happened after he left. However, he could vaguely feel the faint malice of the black shadow lingering around him. So he did not stay. After getting the desired result, he left the territory of the Five Elders Association. However, on the way back, he caught a glimpse of a scene that shocked him. On the large ruins that were almost razed to the ground by the 10,000 Immortals Alliance, a team of cultivators wearing streamer armor appeared. Floating in midair, from the heads of their armor, they projected the shadows of buildings onto the ground. As the beams of light continued to solidify and become more and more dazzling, those originally illusory buildings gradually turned from virtual to real. A team of cultivators created a not-so-small city out of thin air with almost no effort in just half a cup of tea. Mission accomplished. Let me see what the reward is this time. This is too stingy. Forget it, let's go to the next place. These cultivators muttered and flew away one after another. Interesting. Li Qing narrowed his eyes slightly. The cultivators from the land of carefree bliss seemed to have a very different attitude and behavior from the cultivators outside. And the level of development seems to be far beyond the other states of the Five Elders Association. Buildings can be rebuilt, but what about those people who were taken away by the 10,000 Immortals Alliance? Could it be that they can also be conjured out of thin air? Li Qing became interested. After obtaining the consent of the main body, he secretly lurked near this newly built city. Li Qing didn't have to wait long. 6 days later, another team of streamer armor cultivators appeared. They escorted a huge warship and arrived above the city. As a huge beam of light projected down from the warship, it enveloped the city. One body after another, seemingly sleeping, slowly fell into various parts of the city along the beam of light. Before long, the originally empty city became full again. When the warship completed its mission and left, the sleeping residents gradually woke up. And they didn't seem to realize everything that had happened before, as if they had been revived from a frozen state, and immediately continued their previous actions after waking up. Almost in an instant, the city became bustling with noise. Li Qing secretly sneaked into the city, controlled a resident, and carefully investigated. He found that they were indeed real people, not illusory creations. This kind of method. Li Qing's face was solemn. In this war, the Five Elders Association seemed to have lost. But it also seemed like they hadn't lost. Li Qing, who had become somewhat expectant of what would happen next, turned into a sword light and left this place. 10,000 Immortals Alliance, Guangyang State. Holy Embryo Li Fan was playing chess under the willows with a sloppy old man in front of him. The Holy Embryo was very relaxed, but the old man had to think for a long time before making each move. But no matter how hard the old man struggled, he still lost the game in the end. I'm not playing anymore. There's something wrong with you, kid. The old man snorted coldly and directly overturned the chessboard. Strangely enough, those black and white chess pieces that should have been scattered everywhere seemed to be attracted by the chessboard. They returned to the chessboard again. The chessboard straightened itself and fell in front of the old man again. Damn it! The old man couldn't help but cursed in a low voice. The Holy Embryo was already used to this. This was already the 999th game the two had played. 946. The Dharma Jew is broken. What are you saying, senior? What's wrong with me? Looking at the entire Xuanwang realm, who else but me would be willing to play 1,000 games of chess with you? The Saint Embryo smiled, placing a chess piece while asking in return. His first move was directly on the open black lens bracket heavenly center close black lens bracket. The disheveled old man's expression changed. He glanced at the Saint Embryo, his expression becoming incredibly serious. You brat, you're only at the nascent soul stage, yet your calculation ability is terrifying. And you don't even bother to hide it, sitting right next to me. You clearly came prepared. Originally, I was a little happy that after all these years, I could finally indulge in my hobby. Only halfway through did I realize that I had fallen into your trap. The old man sighed softly. The Saint Embryo simply smiled without answering. The disheveled old man was named open black lens bracket Taoist Qinzun close black lens bracket. He was a veteran Harmony Realm cultivator who had fallen in cultivation due to injuries. It was unknown what merits he had once rendered to the Immortal Alliance, but he actually possessed a open black lens bracket loss-seeking jade token close black lens bracket. Of course, at this point in time, few people in the world knew about this. In the eyes of others, this Taoist Qinzun was just an ordinary cultivator who was somewhat crazy. Only more than 10 years later, a mortal named Xiaoshunk would encounter Taoist Qinzun. After accompanying Taoist Qinzun in a shared life of begging for 1,000 days, he was gifted the loss-seeking jade token. With a mortal body, he met the law-evolving jade. He obtained a harmony realm cultivation method and ascended to immortality from then on. This matter was often talked about by later generations. The Saint Embryo sought out Taoist Qinzun, naturally also for his harmony realm law-seeking jade token. However, 1,000 days of begging was too long. So he deliberately provoked the other party into playing chess with him. Taoist Qinzun, his name was closely related to his cultivation method. Everything needed to be done 1,000 times, and he also needed someone to accompany him. When he played chess with the Saint Embryo, he was actually cultivating. The only restriction was that he could not actively mention the reasons behind it to others. And when he completed a open black lens bracket 1000 seeking close black lens bracket cultivation, his appearance and aura would become like another person. So everything depended on fate. But the Saint Embryo Li Fan was able to know about this in advance. When the last piece was placed, the Saint Embryo Li Fan was one move short and ultimately lost to Taoist Qinzun. "You brat, you finally knew to let me win one." Taoist Qinzun cursed angrily. Although he won, he couldn't be happy at all. He overturned the chessboard again, this time the black and white pieces dissipated into the air on their own. And from the old man's body, a surge of aura emanated. "Congratulations, Senior, you are not far from re-entering the harmony realm," the Saint Embryo Li Fan said with a smile. "What do you want?" Taoist Qinzun didn't waste any words and asked directly. "The law-seeking jade token." "Get lost." Taoist Qinzun threw the jade token over directly. Without waiting for Li Fan to reply, his figure disappeared. The Saint Embryo put away the jade token, not caring. Anyone who lost 999 games in a row, and all of them were narrowly defeated, when it seemed like they were only one move away, would definitely be a little grumpy. Not attacking was already considered high quality on Taoist Qinzun's part. With the Tao Transformation Stone's deduction, there are very few in the world who can win against me in the art of chess. The Saint Embryo shook his head slightly and came to a remote and uninhabited place. He directly used the law-seeking jade token. Prior to this, he had already settled his identity within the Myriad Immortal Alliance. So the whole process did not encounter any accidents. It was still a cultivator coming to guide him, and a door appeared out of thin air. However, after a burst of dizziness, he once again arrived at the Myriad Immortal Alliance headquarters. Looking around, it wasn't the scene of the Myriad Immortal Alliance headquarters. In a blurry ball of light, several figures stood. Intermittent voices of conversation came from within. "How confident are you in this trip? Do my best and leave the rest to fate." "That doesn't sound like something you would say." "The strength is too disparate, I can only risk my life." "Forget it, go ahead. I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse." The voice of one of the figures sounded somewhat familiar to the Saint Embryo Li Fan. But it wasn't completely the same as anyone. He knew that this was the illusion produced by entering the Immortal Alliance headquarters for the first time and being affected by the law-transmitting Heavenly Lord. But this time, he didn't know why it was different from what the original body and the clone had seen before. One of the figures in this is the law transmitter. What does this represent? Before Li Fan could think, he only felt a burst of earth-shattering tremors, and the picture shattered layer by layer. He left the illusion and appeared in the Immortal Alliance headquarters. The guiding cultivator was used to this and simply explained a few words before taking Li Fan to the law-evolving jade's location. He was familiar with the road, just like the encounters in the previous lives. Until he entered the internal headquarters of the Guardian Hall, the announcement he heard made Li Fan feel greatly surprised. Law-evolving jade application user, Fan Li. Number 005. Authority level, Harmony. Please wait patiently here. Estimated remaining waiting time, 3,623 days and 6 hours. The Saint Embryo Li Fan initially thought he had misheard. After hearing it again, he jumped up in shock. How can it take so long to wait? With suspicion in his heart, he also made a corresponding expression and couldn't help but ask the blank space. If you are unwilling to wait, you may leave on your own. Warning, leaving means voluntarily giving up the right to use the law-seeking jade token. After a long time, a voice replied from the space. I'm number 005, but I need to wait almost 10 years. What kind of logic is this? Do you think I haven't used the law-evolving jade before? How long can it take to deduce a cultivation method? Someone must be abusing their power. The Saint Embryo Li Fan wasn't afraid at all, but instead made a big fuss. He looked like he was determined to get an explanation. And seemingly unable to bear Li Fan's nonsense, the voice sounded coldly again after a while. Due to force majeure, the law evolving Jade's deduction ability has been severely interfered with. Therefore, the waiting time has also been greatly extended. Please understand and cooperate, cultivator. Warning, this matter is a high-level secret of the Immortal Alliance, please do not leak it. The voice warned. The Saint Embryo Li Fan's expression changed slightly, but he didn't restrain himself at all. Instead, he exclaimed exaggeratedly, "What? The foundation of the Immortal Alliance, the miraculous object of the heavens, the law-evolving Jade actually has a malfunction. What are you guys in the Guardian Hall doing? Such a serious thing has happened, and not only are you not thinking about how to solve it, but you are also deliberately hiding it. There must be traitors among you. No, I must make this matter public." In the Saint Embryo Li Fan's loud shouts, a figure slowly floated in front of him. Expressionless, looking at the Saint Embryo Li Fan as if looking at a dead man. Li Fan instantly became serious. "Why don't you let me take a look? Maybe I have a solution." The figure was stunned on the spot upon hearing this. 947. The heart is greedy and ignorant. That somewhat blurry figure instantly became clear. An old man with a full head of white hair and the character, "La," engraved on his forehead suddenly appeared before the holy embryo, Li Fan. "Do you know what you're saying? So many integration realm cultivators have looked at this and are helpless, and you, a mere core formation, dare to spout nonsense." The old man looked at Li Fan with a gloomy expression, a hint of killing intent flashing in his eyes. The holy embryo, Li Fan, was not afraid, and shrugged his shoulders. "What if? Anyway, you don't have any better solutions, do you?" This confident appearance made the old man hesitate. After a brief investigation into the background of this seemingly extremely arrogant cultivator, he felt a sense of unusualness. Because this person's background was too clean and simple. It was as if he had appeared out of thin air, and important information was deliberately concealed. In this situation, either this person is an avatar of some big shot, or a spy from the Five Old Fellows. But this kid only has core formation cultivation, that's right. He can't turn the world upside down no matter what. And anyway, the situation can't get any worse. After pondering for a moment, the white-haired old man snorted coldly, "Follow me." As he spoke, the holy embryo, Li Fan, only felt a blur before his eyes. He found himself in the space where the evolution jade tablet originally was. Unlike what he had seen before, the huge sphere composed of countless characters, constantly changing, now seemed to be rusted, and its operation and transformation were extremely slow. Below the sphere, the evolution jade tablet lowly was also sleeping soundly on a long wooden table. 3 cultivators were standing in the distance, looking at the evolution jade tablet, all with worried expressions. Noticing that the white-haired old man had brought the holy embryo, Li Fan, they only glanced at him and did not ask any further questions. Then, they quickly refocused their attention on the character light sphere that was about to stop running. It seemed to be entangled with some kind of strange power. When Li Fan's divine sense approached it, he felt as if the surrounding scenes were fast-forwarding hundreds of times. When Li Fan decisively retracted his divine sense, he realized that in that short moment, almost a joss stick's worth of time had passed in reality. Li Fan realized that it was not that the surrounding time flow had become faster. Rather, his own thinking speed was extremely slowed down, almost falling into stagnation. How could it become like this? The holy embryo, Li Fan, couldn't help but frown slightly, and ask the white-haired old man via voice transmission, could it be that this place was invaded by thieves, which led to... This was a rather severe accusation, and the white-haired old man's expression changed slightly, interrupting Li Fan, "Don't talk nonsense. The cultivators who have had contact with the evolution jade tablet during this period have already been thoroughly investigated, and all suspects have been ruled out. In fact, the abnormality of the evolution jade tablet appeared inexplicably on the day our Celestial Alliance started the war with the Five Old Fellows." Upon hearing this, the 5 Dharma forms instantly appeared in Li Fan's mind, pulling the white giant net and distorting the principles of heaven and earth in the territory of the Five Old Fellows. The evolution jade tablet is a marvel of the Xuanwang world, and also represents a principle of heaven and earth. Could it be that it was accidentally injured in this process? Li Fan was able to think of this reason immediately, so the Dharma Protector Hall naturally couldn't not think of it. The principle of evolution itself has not been affected, we have repeatedly confirmed it. The white-haired old man looked at Li Fan's thoughtful expression and said faintly via voice transmission. Not this reason. Li Fan nodded, refocusing his gaze on the character sphere. The strange power shrouded it was like a barrier formed on the outside of the light sphere, isolating all possible probes from the outside world. Li Fan pondered for a moment, and once again separated a wisp of divine sense, flying towards it. Under normal circumstances, this kind of behavior of directly contacting the main body of the evolution jade tablet is absolutely prohibited. However, at this moment, the evolution jade tablet was malfunctioning, and as an attempt at treatment, no one came out to stop it. As the divine sense continued to approach the huge light sphere, the surrounding scenes once again became still. Regardless, he continued to fly towards the sphere. In the induction of the divine sense, the space gradually became distorted and twisted. The sphere full of characters also stretched out, turning into a plane. It was like a piece of white paper from the sky to the earth, with countless characters on the paper, constantly flashing and changing. From the perspective of divine sense, the speed at which the evolution jade tablet deduced the exercises did not seem to be abnormal. However, this was because the thinking speed of the divine sense itself was also delayed, and both sides fell to the same level as a result. Could it be caused by that distortion? The divine sense quickly patrolled the surface of the paper, simply outlining the current full picture of the evolution jade tablet. The mending heaven record can cure the diseases of the world. The evolution jade tablet is the embodiment of the laws of the world. As long as you find the corresponding symptoms. First of all, it is necessary to determine whether the cause of such an anomaly is external factors or the evolution jade tablet itself. That wisp of divine sense carefully checked it again. For the diseases of the cultivation world, the mending heaven record has its own set of observation, auscultation, interrogation, and palpation techniques. Corresponding to human illness, if the world is sick, there will naturally be various abnormal signs. Under the scan of the divine sense, some clues were indeed found. Greed is overwhelming, and darkness arises from the heart. The divine sense understood, and after repeatedly confirming the diagnosis, it dissipated on its own. Outside the light sphere, in the vast dark space, the holy embryo, Li Fan, had been standing still for 7 days and 7 nights. The white-haired old man also knew that he was observing the internal situation of the evolution light sphere, so he had not bothered him. He was just discussing solutions with the other 3 cultivators. It can only be delayed for another month at most. If it really doesn't work, let's ask the heavenly doctor as soon as possible. That's easy to say. If I could invite him, I would have gone long ago. The heavenly doctor's whereabouts are erratic, and it is very difficult to contact him. Moreover, this person acts entirely according to his own preferences, and does not even give face to the transmitter of Dharma. The 3 of them discussed for a while, their brows still furrowed. The holy embryo, Li Fan, woke up leisurely. Feeling the information from the divine sense, he nodded secretly in his heart. Then, he imperceptibly focused his gaze on the evolution jade tablet lowly who seemed to be sleeping. How is it? Any gains? The white-haired old man didn't have much hope in his heart, and just asked casually. Who would have thought that the holy embryo, Li Fan, would nod his head? It's almost certain. But it still needs final confirmation. I can't see that you're also right. The white-haired old man suddenly looked at the holy embryo, his eyes full of disbelief. What did you just say? What's almost certain? The old man's abnormal behavior instantly attracted the attention of the other 3 Dharma Protector Hall cultivators. With a flash of their figures, they surrounded the holy embryo in the blink of an eye. Kid, it doesn't matter if you don't have the ability. But don't talk nonsense. 948. Relieve his worries easily. The 4 of them were all Tao integration cultivators, their gazes fixed intently on the saint embryo Li Fan, their own auras surging. Li Fan, however, showed no sign of nervousness, cupping his hands to the left and right. Senior cultivators, please be at ease. Allow me to make a final confirmation. However, I need to send a wisp of my divine sense there. As he spoke, Li Fan pointed his index finger towards the derivation La Little Lowly, who was currently sleeping soundly on the long table. The 4 Tao integration cultivators exchanged glances. All of them wore troubled expressions. Li Fan simply waited quietly for them to make a decision. Boy, is there no other way? Li Fan replied calmly, the so-called cure should match the disease. If the cause is misdiagnosed and forced treatment is applied, it may cause even greater damage. It's just the tiniest wisp of divine sense, only for the purpose of observation and communication. I'm afraid it couldn't even harm a mortal. If you're really worried, then forget it. The four Dao integration cultivators discussed for a while longer. In the end, they decided to let the saint embryo Li Fan give it a try. After Li Fan separated a wisp of his divine sense, he immediately felt four different divine senses, like chains, attaching themselves to him. The five were connected as a whole. Everything seen and heard could be shared, and they could even communicate with each other. Let's go. Four voices sounded in Li Fan's heart at the same time. Knowing that this was a necessary protective measure, Li Fan had no objections. In the next moment, five divine senses flew into the derivation La Little Lily's sea of consciousness together. The world was filled with golden light, floating with books of techniques. Like an ocean of books, it was too vast and boundless. Divine sense entering it would almost lose its way. Li Fan could clearly see the names of the techniques floating beside him, and even if he could browse the contents of the techniques to his heart's content. If there weren't four powerful divine senses watching him closely, suppressing the desire to peep into these countless techniques, his divine sense transformed into a figure and shouted loudly around him, "Little one, stop pretending to sleep. Come out quickly." Although the voice was not loud, it was completely out of place in this world full of techniques steadfastly spreading around, and the divine senses of the four Dao integration cultivators also revealed their figures at this moment. What did you say? Derivation Law Jade is pretending to sleep. How is that possible? Never having thought of this result, they stared blankly at Li Fan with disbelief. Li Fan ignored them, and continued to shout to the surroundings, "Little one, do you think pretending to sleep will reduce your workload? What belongs to you will always be yours. You can't escape. When you wake up, you still have to continue deriving. You even have to make up for the time you owe." Li Fan urged his subordinates to work like a black-hearted boss, chattering non-stop. Even the four Dao integration protectors couldn't help but frown slightly when they heard this. Thus, I don't know how long it passed. Noisy. A petite figure suddenly appeared above Li Fan's head. Holding a wooden stick several times larger than herself in her hand, she was about to strike Li Fan on the head. "Joe, you're awake." The four Dao integrations were overjoyed at the sight. Although Li Fan's actual combat power was very weak, he wouldn't be unable to avoid such an obvious attack. His figure flickered, dodging the derivation La Little Loli's attack. Missing the strike, the little Loli carried the wooden stick on her shoulder and came to Li Fan angrily, "What, little one? This grandma is thousands of years old. I'm much older than you." Li Fan's expression sank, and he scolded, "If that's the case, why are you in the form of a child and insist on pretending to sleep? Don't you know how many people are worried about you?" The derivation La Little Loli's body trembled, and her aura instantly weakened. But then she snorted coldly and stubbornly said, "It's none of your business. You're so annoying. If it weren't for you, they wouldn't have been able to tell." As she spoke, she secretly touched the giant wooden stick on her shoulder again. Looking at Li Fan, a sinister light flashed in her eyes. Li Fan turned to look at the four Dao integrations and cupped his hands. Everything was self-explanatory. "My little ancestor, why are you throwing a tantrum again?" The white-haired old man came to the derivation La Little Loli with a wry smile, looking helpless. "Do you know that the Protector Hall has almost been paralyzed these past few days? Many urgent matters have been forcibly and helplessly postponed. What does it have to do with me?" The little Loli covered her ears, looking like she wouldn't listen. "I've been working continuously for 2,327 days. It's already very hard. The vacation I was promised before was suddenly gone again," she said angrily. "I don't care. I want a vacation." Unexpectedly, this was the reason why derivation Law Jade was forced to pretend to sleep. The four Protector Hall Dao integrations all smiled wryly and helplessly. "Isn't there a reason for this?" The four of them said one thing after another, constantly comforting and persuading her. It took a lot of effort to persuade the derivation La Little Loli to change her mind. She promised to rest for another day and then go back to work. After saying that, the little Loli disappeared angrily. The others were also forcibly expelled from the Loli's sea of consciousness. The crowd, who had returned to their bodies, couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief as they looked at the light sphere in the distance, where the speed of the character transformation had returned to normal. "This little brother, how did you see that derivation La Jade was pretending to sleep?" The white-haired old man looked at Li Fan at this time and asked curiously. His attitude was much better, not as indifferent as before. It's a unique skill, and it's not convenient to reveal it. Li Fan was not overwhelmed by being treated as an equal by the Dao integration cultivator, but refused to answer the question. A trace of embarrassment flashed across the white-haired old man's face. But it quickly disappeared without any reaction. In his opinion, this young cultivator was able to see derivation law Jade's disease at a glance. His attainments in medicine are probably extraordinary. His true form, even if he is not a Dao integration cultivator, is not much weaker. It's okay. It's good as long as derivation law Jade wakes up. The other 3 Dao integrations smiled and smoothed things over. Speaking of which, I helped you solve such a difficult problem, shouldn't there be some reward? At this time, Li Fan suddenly asked. The 4 were slightly startled. The white-haired old man reacted the fastest. Yes. Definitely. The reward is easy to say. It's just that we have to ask the little brother to help keep the derivation law Jade's malfunction a secret. What does little brother want? Li Fan pondered for a moment and replied, I haven't thought about it yet. If I have any needs in the future, I'll come to you. How about that? The white-haired old man stared at Li Fan for a moment, then nodded. Instead, he handed a jade pendant to Li Fan to verify his identity. Since everything was back on track, Li Fan returned to the waiting space. According to the previous queue order, he waited for the derivation of the technique. 949. Seduce Loli with clever words. After the Dharma evolution, little Loli returned to her normal work schedule. The waiting time was no longer 10 years long. Just 4 days later, holy embryo Li Fan returned to the space where the Dharma evolution jade was located. The little Loli, who was working at her desk, seemed to sense Li Fan's arrival and suddenly looked up. When she saw that it was indeed Li Fan, her big eyes darted around, and she immediately had a clever idea. The little Loli sat up straight, looking very serious. When Li Fan came forward, she clapped her hands on the table and said in a childish voice, What kind of technique do you want to deduce? What are the requirements for the technique? Do you want to create something from nothing, or use a blueprint? Write it down yourself first. Then, a blank piece of paper flew towards Li Fan. She seemed to have forgotten that Li Fan had treated her illness before, and was now solely focused on deducing techniques. Li Fan grabbed the paper, and the lines of text he had in mind quickly appeared. Use the 3 Danger Ghost God Nether records as a blueprint technique to deduce a similar technique. Specific requirements. After practicing the technique, the aura and characteristics revealed should be the same as the 3 Danger Ghost God Nether records. However, the course should be different, and it must be a completely new technique. Dense small characters quickly filled the entire page. However, the paper did not become larger. Instead, after the font size was reduced overall, new blank areas appeared. This cycle repeated, shrinking more than 10 times, but still did not fill the paper. Although this was due to the complexity of the 3 Danger Ghost God Nether records technique, this unusual scene still alerted the Dao harmonization guardians in this space. Li Fan keenly noticed a divine sense sweeping over him. Just as he was about to explain, the Dharma evolution little Loli took the initiative to exonerate him. Don't worry, it's just a simple technique. It's not a curse. The little Loli rested her chin on her hands, staring blankly ahead. Countless characters seemed to be flashing in her big eyes. The divine sense that had locked onto holy embryo Li Fan then moved away. Li Fan continued to write on the paper, and when he finally finished, the white paper turned into a stream of light and flew back into the Dharma evolution jade's hands. The little Loli lowered her head and fell into thought, not speaking for a long time. The blueprint technique is a bit complicated. And you have a lot of requirements. There are still a few questions I need you to explain in detail. After pretending to think for a moment, the Dharma evolution little Loli slammed the table again. To prevent your technique from being leaked, come with me. Before Li Fan could answer, a beam of light shot out from the giant character sphere above, enveloping him. The next moment, holy embryo Li Fan disappeared from this space. At the same time, the Dharma evolution little Loli beside the long table also disappeared. The white-haired Dao harmonization cultivator appeared, looking helpless. He knew the Dharma evolution jade had a childish temper. After being exposed for faking illness by this Fan Li, she would definitely want to take revenge and vent her anger when she encountered him again. However, it was just a prank and would not cause any serious consequences. The white-haired Dao harmonization cultivator simply did not stop her. It's good to find her a punching bag occasionally, so she doesn't go on strike all the time, the white-haired Tao harmonization cultivator thought. Inside the endless sea of books. As soon as Holy Embryo Li Fan entered this place, he felt hundreds of wooden sticks surrounding him tightly, about to smash down on him. Wait! At the critical moment, Li Fan shouted loudly. The wooden sticks stopped an inch in front of Holy Embryo Li Fan. The Dharma Evolution Little Loli appeared above, with her hands on her hips, looking down at Li Fan, very proud. How is it? Do you know you were wrong? Apologize to me properly, and I'll spare you. Otherwise. HMPH. As a demonstration, one of the wooden sticks gently tapped Li Fan's forehead. Li Fan sized up the Dharma Evolution Little Loli with a smile that was not a smile. Her heart tightened at his gaze. What are you going to do? I'm warning you, don't you dare make a move. If we really fight, you're no match for me. I haven't fought anyone in many years, I'm afraid I'll accidentally kill you. The Dharma Evolution Jade waved her small fists, threatening angrily. Li Fan just shook his head with a smile and did not answer. The Dharma Evolution Jade became even more annoyed. You're really annoying. Are you going to admit your mistake or not? If you don't apologize to me, I'm really going to beat you up. Li Fan ignored the wooden sticks that were almost touching his face and sighed. It seems your illness hasn't fully recovered. Hearing Holy Embryo Li Fan's words, the Dharma Evolution Little Loli shuddered. What illness? What illness do I have? Don't talk nonsense. Although the Dharma Evolution Jade tried her best to hide it, the panic on her small face was not fake. Li Fan chuckled. Since you're not sick, how can you always think about being lazy and resting? On the surface, you want to make trouble for me, but in reality, you just want to take this opportunity to rest again. Not even letting go of such a short time. How lazy are you? Li Fan's eyes were like torches, and his voice was stern. The Dharma Evolution Little Loli trembled. You're slandering me. She stared at Li Fan with a grievance on her face, seeming about to cry. Li Fan was expressionless and was not confused by her. However, after a brief silence, he changed the subject. However, this can't be blamed on you. Relaxation and tension, moderation is the law of nature. Anyone who has worked continuously for so long will want to rest. The Dharma Evolution Little Loli's eyes widened when she did not expect the other party to speak for her, and she nodded repeatedly. Moreover, in my opinion, your repeated strikes and laziness are not your own intention. It's just the instinctual drive of your body. So-called insatiable greed arises from the obscuration of the heart. Just like mortals who are thirsty want to drink water, and those who are hungry want to eat. It is your nature and cannot be avoided. Holy Embryo Li Fan spoke eloquently, and the Dharma Evolution Little Loli had never heard of such a theory, and was immediately deeply attracted. The wooden sticks in the sky disappeared, and she said thoughtfully, so that's how it is. No wonder I can't control myself from wanting to be lazy this time, but every time I'm lazy, I always have a sense of guilt in my heart. This is the heart obscuration disease, Li Fan sighed. The little Loli looked at Li Fan, who had the heart of a doctor, and asked curiously, is this also a disease? Can it be cured? After all, the other party could see through her pretense of being asleep at a glance. The little Loli was still convinced of Li Fan's medical skills. Moreover, no one had ever told her these things, so she couldn't help but follow Li Fan's train of thought and naturally ask the question in her heart. Li Fan smiled. To cure this disease, it is difficult and easy. The greed in your heart arises from not being able to rest for a long time. 950. See the bones in the museum again. Saint Child Li Fan's voice echoed in this endless sea of cultivation methods. The harder something is to get, the more you want it. So, to completely quell the craving in your heart, you just need to satisfy your desire for rest all at once. Give yourself a long vacation. So long that you have nothing to do, and you're extremely bored. Hearing Li Fan's words, the little Loli's eyes lit up instantly. She couldn't help but say, how could anyone feel bored? If I didn't have to deduce cultivation methods, I would definitely sleep for decades first. Seemingly yearning for that wonderful vacation life, the derivation law little Loli's face was full of longing. But soon, she said dejectedly, alas, don't even mention resting for decades. Even if I could rest for 10 or 15 days, it would be very difficult. It's so good not to have to work. Recalling the happy times of slacking off before, the derivation law little Loli couldn't help but sigh. Then she looked at Li Fan and complained, "It's all your fault, otherwise I could have pretended for a while longer." Blindly running away isn't the solution, Li Fan smiled faintly, completely resolving the illness as the right path. The little lowly snorted, "It's easy for you to say. I made an agreement with the Law Transmission Heavenly Lord back then, to deduce all the cultivation methods in the world before I can truly rest. Alas, at this rate, it'll probably take thousands of years. It's really worrying." The derivation law little lowly pouted, sighing and lamenting. "If only another derivation law jade could be found to help you deduce. Then you could rest, right?" Just then, Saint Child Li Fan suddenly said with a sigh. The little lowly glared at Li Fan, "This old lady is one of a kind in the world, where am I going to find another me?" However, the little lowly then froze for a moment. If the me from thousands of years later could directly hand over the deduced cultivation methods to me, that would be great. Then wouldn't I be ostensibly working, but actually resting? The little lowly's eyes became radiant, lost in a fantasy world. Through the conversation with the derivation law jade, Saint Child Li Fan had obtained enough information. At this time, he decisively spoke to wake her up. "I have already explained your illness. Where is the cultivation method I need?" The derivation law jade didn't react at all, just staring blankly and giggling foolishly. Li Fan had no choice but to raise his voice and repeat it again. The little lowly then woke up as if from a dream. She looked at Li Fan with resentment and complained, "Let me rest a little longer, geez. It should be a while before those guys come to urge me. And this cultivation method of yours is indeed quite complicated, I can still take the opportunity to rest a little longer." She waved her hand, telling Li Fan to wait a little longer. The little lowly began to space out again. Li Fan didn't stop her, but instead looked at the countless cultivation methods floating around. Unlike when the derivation law jade was pretending to sleep before, he could only see the names of the cultivation methods written on the book covers. The cultivation methods themselves were bound by chains composed of characters, making them impossible to view. Li Fan gave up the idea of peeking. He kept his eyes on his nose and his nose on his heart, patiently waiting for the little lowly to rest enough. A full day passed, and it seemed that under the urging and questioning of the myriad realms, the derivation law jade finally woke up slowly with a hint of regret. Alas! She stretched out her small hand, and a book with the words 3 Calamities 100 Tribulations Bright Spirit Method appeared out of thin air. Obviously, it had already been deduced by her long ago. "Here, take it. It's time for you to leave too. I hope the next person who comes to deduce a cultivation method is equally difficult, so that I can save some free time again." In the little lowly's voice, Saint Child Li Fan returned to the character light sphere space. As soon as he returned, the derivation law jade became as listless and drowsy as before. Looking at the faint warning coming from her eyes, Li Fan immediately understood. The derivation law jade's actual cultivation method deduction speed was much faster than she outwardly showed. Each cultivation method deduction could be completed very quickly, so she could freely rest for the remaining time. This was perhaps one of the reasons why she could persist in deduction for thousands of years. And the Myriad Immortals Alliance Guardian Hall was probably aware of this. But pressing her too hard might backfire. So they simply turned a blind eye. With the cultivation method in hand, the purpose of this trip had been achieved. Li Fan cupped his hands to bid farewell to the white-haired Tao integration expert. Before leaving, he also explained the source of the derivation law jade's illness in detail. Just as he was about to leave, Li Fan remembered something again and took out the token that the white-haired old man had given him earlier. "Before leaving the Myriad Immortals Alliance headquarters, I would like to visit the Museum Divine Treasure Hall. Is that possible?" The white-haired old man was stunned. Visiting the Divine Treasure Hall was something he could do at any time. But the token he gave represented a favor from him, which had so many uses. If it were placed outside, who knows how many cultivators would desperately fight for it. Was it being wasted so easily? "Young man, would you like to reconsider?" Even the white-haired old man himself felt it was a bit of a waste and couldn't help but advise him. "No need. I've made up my mind," Li Fan replied calmly. The white-haired old man shook his head slightly and didn't try to persuade him any further. He took back the token, sent Li Fan out of the Guardian Hall, and then instructed the guiding cultivator. Then he returned to the Guardian Hall. Li Fan followed behind the guiding cultivator, heading towards the Museum Divine Treasure Hall. He had changed his mind this time and wanted to visit the Museum Divine Treasure Hall temporarily. In reality, it was the main body's intention. One was to take a look at the skull displayed in the center of the Divine Treasure Hall. The other was to take advantage of the time visiting the Divine Treasure Hall to memorize the 3 calamities 100 tribulations bright spirit method first. The Divine Treasure Hall should be safe. But once he left the Immortal Alliance headquarters, that might not be the case. Moreover, his performance in the Guardian Hall was a bit out of line, and it was inevitable that he would be targeted. So Li Fan had already decided that as soon as he left the Immortal Alliance headquarters, he would directly abandon this saint child to prevent being tracked. After entering the Divine Treasure Hall, memories of the collections also flooded in. It seemed that the main body had been here before. However, Li Fan still pretended to be visiting for the first time, exclaiming in admiration repeatedly. In reality, he was secretly constantly browsing the 3 calamities 100 tribulations bright spirit method deduced by the derivation law Jade. The complexity of this cultivation method was no less than that of the Zon Heaven Sex Immortal method. It was just that its power was weaker by more than one level, only having the performance and combat power of the Dao integration realm. However, it should be enough for Li Fan to act mysterious and deceive Mo Rubin. After memorizing the entire cultivation method, Li Fan nodded in satisfaction. His mind was immersed in the comprehension of the cultivation method, until he finally arrived at the very center of the Museum Divine Treasure Hall, and then he regained his senses. He looked at the skull in front of him, staring blankly. It was no different from the skull of Immortal. But through the layers of protection, Li Fan could still feel a different kind of aura. 951. One thought brings forth thousands of ghosts. Within the skull's hollow eye sockets, a faint, eerie black light flickered. It seemed to be gazing at the Saint Fetus Li Fan, through layers of obstruction. Yet, instead of feeling cold or terrified, Li Fan felt a strange sense of familiarity and warmth. It was as if he had known the owner of this skull before. Strange, this feeling. The Saint Fetus stared at the skull for a long time, not leaving. Unlike the other exhibits in the Divine Treasury Hall, there was no detailed explanation about this skull. Only the skull of the first cultivator infected with the immortal mortal taint served as its identity marker. And it seemed precisely because it had been infected with the immortal mortal taint during its lifetime that it was no different from the remains left behind after the death of ordinary people. Compared to the bones left behind by some powerful cultivators after their fall, which glowed with a faint white light, the difference was immediately apparent. According to the guide, perhaps no one except the curator of the Divine Treasury Hall knew why this object was placed in the very center of the hall. But the fact that it could be displayed in the very center of the entire Divine Treasury Hall was enough to demonstrate its value. Whether actual or commemorative, sensing the subtle emotional fluctuations from the main body, the Saint Fetus also knew that this skull seemed very important to him as well. But clearly, now was not the time to take it away. Taking one last deep look at the skull, the Saint Fetus Li Fan was about to leave when he suddenly thought of something. Turning back again, he carefully memorized the entire appearance of the skull from top to bottom. Perhaps we can reconstruct the appearance of that cultivator based on the shape of the skull. It was for this reason that the main body had issued this instruction. Although Li Fan himself did not master this technique, there were always cultivators in the vast Xuanwang world who could do this. Next, the Saint Fetus wandered around the Divine Treasury Hall for a long time. After confirming that the main body had synchronized and mastered all the contents of the 3 calamities 100 tribulations divine illumination art, he pretended to be still enjoying himself and left the hall. The receiving cultivator was still dutifully waiting outside the door. He escorted the Saint Fetus out of the Immortal Alliance headquarters before disappearing. The Saint Fetus Li Fan sensed the faint presence of cultivators secretly following him and sneered inwardly. Without the slightest hesitation, he resolutely chose self-destruction. His own nascent soul grotto heaven, in a huge roar, was like a fiery light cluster, suddenly bursting open. By the time the tracking cultivator realized something was wrong and rushed over, the Saint Fetus Li Fan had already vanished without a trace, reduced to ashes. The tracking cultivator was dressed in black, with the character La also engraved on his forehead. He looked at the sky with an unsightly expression. There was actually no sign of a cultivator's fall. Elder Jen guessed correctly, it really is a clone. It's a pity that I didn't expect it to be so decisive and careful, cutting off the clues. It seems that we can only start investigating from that audience law Jade token. A trace of unwillingness flashed in the black-clothed cultivator's eyes, but after repeatedly investigating the scene and still finding no clues, he could only leave dejectedly. In the spirit wood world. Li Fan was carefully studying the 3 calamities 100 tribulations divine illumination art in the secret chamber. He had previously issued a divine decree through the faceless statue, asking the cultivators of the Myriad Worlds Association to find someone who could reconstruct the original appearance of a person based on their skull. He believed that it would not be long before there were results. If we can determine the other party's identity, perhaps we can find out what the eternal legacy that is so attractive to the returning to truth is. Putting this matter aside for the time being, Li Fan was now focusing all his attention on the technique in front of him. Since the blueprint for deduction was the 3 Perils Ghost God Underworld record, and Li Fan's requirement was also that the performance and characteristics after operating the technique were similar to it. Therefore, this 3 calamities 100 tribulations divine illumination art could almost be said to be a low imitation version of the Underworld record. The 3 Perils Ghost God Underworld record is to cultivate one's own countless thoughts into ghost god-like existences within the body. Each ghost god can actually be seen as an independent individual. However, it is created by the main body and is subject to the main body's restraint. After the 3 calamities 100 tribulations divine illumination art is completed, there will also be countless ghost gods existing within the body. But instead of cutting one's own thoughts to form separate individuals, it is a divine thought creation cultivated through tempering. Strictly speaking, those ghost gods are still part of Li Fan's will. It's just a unique concrete manifestation. Although the upper limit of power is lower, there is no risk of loss of control. On the contrary, by transforming distracting thoughts into conscious creations, one's Tao heart can be made more pure. Of course, for Li Fan, who possesses the Xuanwang Immortal Heart mantra, he himself does not have many distracting thoughts. Therefore, in order to cultivate this technique, Li Fan also needs to deliberately evolve many thoughts. Half a month later, in front of Li Fan, a deformed transparent creation, neither human nor inhuman, with 2 heads and 7 arms, suddenly appeared. Examining the creation of will for a moment, Li Fan always felt that something was wrong. Although it was also a creation of will, it seemed to be quite different from what the 3 Perils Ghost God Underworld record had transformed into. After thinking for a long time, Li Fan suddenly realized. My heart is unperturbed, and the creations of will that are generated are inevitably somewhat great, glorious, and righteous. Unlike the Underworld record, which is full of gloomy aura. After Li Fan realized the reason for the difference, dark thoughts could not help but emerge in his mind. Subsequently, the creations of will also became extremely evil. Li Fan then followed suit. Logically speaking, generating creations of will is not a one-day effort. It needs to be combined with one's own insights from the disasters and tribulations experienced and slowly cultivated. Over time, a large army of creations of will can be cultivated. But how could Li Fan be an ordinary person? He has experienced too much in his many reincarnations. The historical trends of the many branches of the Xuanwang world, and the various things he has seen and heard, have all been transformed into resources for building creations of will. Even benefiting from having witnessed the scene of the Xuanwang world being destroyed by a true immortal with one glance. The final horror and despair of countless cultivators at the time of the destruction of the world allowed Li Fan to create some creations of will that looked extremely terrifying and chilling. With the blessing of the limitless emptiness and fullness art, his own will is even more powerful. In just over 10 days, an army of ferocious ghost gods, full of evil and resentment, was entrenched in Li Fan's body. Feeling his masterpiece, even Li Fan could not help but frown. I am afraid that once released, it will truly be the descent of the ghost realm. With a thought, Li Fan flashed into an empty space. It was the enhanced 2 instruments microdust formation used to trap Yan Fangzhou. At this moment, Yan Fangzhou seemed to be unable to bear the inhuman torture. His eyes were dull, and he sat blankly on the ground. Like a walking corpse, without any vitality. Completely different from his former spirited image when he first arrived. 952. Everything is ready. It has to be said that Yan Fangzhou seemed truly senile at this moment. Even Li Fan, as astute as he was, couldn't tell if he was faking it for a time. But it doesn't matter, I'll know after a try. With a thought, the thousands upon thousands of hideous and terrifying ghosts and gods instantly descended into the formation. Darkness enveloped the entire space. Those distorted monsters were all staring at Yan Fangzhou at this moment. Each revealed a chilling expression, and then pounced towards Yan Fangzhou. For a time, the sounds of ghosts crying and wolves howling echoed. In the center of the myriad ghosts, Yan Fangzhou, who had been sitting still, suddenly jumped up. His eyes were bloodshot as he looked at the countless ghosts around him, and couldn't help but shudder. But seeing that these ghosts were about to reach him, Yan Fangzhou gritted his teeth and roared in despair, "I'll fight you." Then he mobilized the last bit of cultivation in his body and fought desperately with those ghosts and gods. "Not bad, you acted quite like it. You almost fooled me." Li Fan rarely praised him. But at his prompting, the attacks of those terrifying ghosts and gods became more fierce. Since they were all creations of divine sense, every attack that landed on Yan Fangzhou not only caused physical trauma and pain, but also caused corresponding pain to his divine soul. And those ghosts and gods seemed to be playing with him, not directly tearing Yan Fangzhou to pieces. They just attacked again and again, each time as if tearing off a small piece from his divine soul. It wouldn't bring fatal injuries, but it would increase the pain 100-fold. Ah! Yan Fangzhou let out a powerless, desperate roar, and was eventually overwhelmed by countless ghosts. Heaven will entrust great responsibilities to the people, must first make their will suffer, strain their muscles and bones. Young man, I have high hopes for you. Li Fan nodded in satisfaction. His figure flickered and left this place, leaving only thousands of ghosts to accompany Yan Fangzhou in his training. Back in the cultivation secret room, Li Fan pondered to himself, now that my cultivation method has been initially completed, the momentum is enough to disguise the Fa King Sun Xingwang of that year. Appearance and memory can be concealed through the open black lens bracket sitting and forgetting secret canon close black lens bracket. It can be said that everything is ready, waiting for Mo Rubin to come to my door. I wonder how He Zhenghao is doing. Soon, with the help of the faceless stone statue, many images appeared in Li Fan's mind. Recently, He Zhenghao's prayers have decreased. It's not that his faith in the red dust compassionate immortal has weakened, but that he has been too busy recently. He didn't even have time to generate thoughts of gratitude in his heart, and was interrupted by serious matters. The so-called serious matter is the comprehensive promotion of open black lens bracket profound heaven sealing spirit close black lens bracket. Previously, through Li Fan's guidance, He Zhenghao fully grasped the complete set of array diagrams of profound heaven sealing spirit, as well as the understanding of the array. After some review, the Myriad Immortals Alliance's Array Strategy Hall also recognized the feasibility of profound heaven sealing spirit. The decision was very rapid, completely different from the usual procrastination. Soon the approval from the higher authorities had been passed, and the task was issued, to build a real profound heaven sealing spirit array as soon as possible. At the same time, the Immortal Alliance headquarters will provide a fragment of the heavenly profound mirror as a test object for the array's power. This experiment is almost the highest secret of the Immortal Alliance. He Zhenghao was also transferred from the headquarters of the Array Strategy Hall to another unknown location. Obviously, it was a top-secret place with many defense measures, and even the sensing screen of the faceless stone statue was a little blurry. But after all, its power level is higher than the Xuanwang realm. So the Myriad Immortals Alliance failed to completely shield Li Fan's peeping. Knowing and understanding the array diagrams are completely different concepts from being able to independently build the array. He Zhenghao, who was theoretically eloquent, encountered unimaginable difficulties in real practice. However, the Myriad Immortals Alliance also knew the difficulty of creating this array, and dispatched 6 equally brilliant array masters to assist. They explored and discussed together. Even the chief of the Array Strategy Hall, Lu Shichen, would often come to inquire about the recent progress of the array. This certainly made He Zhenghao feel a lot of pressure, but he also had a kind of excitement in his heart. He brought his own array talent to the extreme, and successfully created the initial profound heaven-sealing spirit array without begging the red dust compassionate immortal. A faint light shot out, hitting an ancient small mirror directly in front. From the small mirror, a ripple was emitted instinctively. It seemed to resist the erosion of the faint light. The two confronted each other for a moment, but in the end, the ancient small mirror won. He Zhenghao's face was full of disappointment. The breath that he had been holding back, wanting to prove himself, did not come up, and he fainted on the spot, causing a flurry of activity among the monks present. Although the first experiment failed, the Immortal Alliance did not blame him. Instead, they comforted him with kind words. They even made a promise that if the heavenly profound sealing spirit array was really successfully developed, the Immortal Alliance headquarters would come forward and arrange a marriage proposal for He Zhenghao. Let him reconcile with Heng Ruoshui. He Zhenghao heard this, and the previous moment he was still dying. The next second, he jumped up from the bed on the spot, and immediately wanted to conduct the next experiment. He Zhenghao knew that although the Heng family had a huge influence, it was not worth mentioning in front of the entire Myriad Immortals Alliance. If the Immortal Alliance headquarters came forward, the Heng family elders would have no reason to stop their marriage. Imagining the scene of returning to the Heng family in glory soon, He Zhenghao was immediately full of energy. He forgot all about fatigue and hardship. Li Fan shook his head repeatedly at this scene. Since even He Zhenghao's previous information has been thoroughly investigated, presumably the fact that he joined the Kongyan Mutual Aid Society and soared into the sky from then on cannot be concealed. It depends on when Mo Rubin comes to my door. A faint light flashed in Li Fan's eyes. But waiting passively has never been Li Fan's style. He decided to take the initiative to do something to attract Mo Rubin's attention. His figure flashed, and Li Fan left the Spirit Wood realm. Flying quickly, after half a day, he came to Jushan Prefecture on the border. At this moment, Jushan Prefecture is no longer the empty plain. Since the Five Old Men's Association took the initiative to apologize, Jushan Prefecture has returned to the rule of the Myriad Immortals Alliance. And this is also the place where the heavenly Venerable Dharma appearance first showed its divine power, so it attracted many monks from the Immortal Alliance to come and observe. Some monks even tried to figure out the killing supernatural powers of the heavenly Venerable Dharma appearance from here. In addition, the Myriad Immortals Alliance has achieved an absolute advantage in strategy, and there is no worry about the Five Old Men's Association advancing in a short time. So this originally barren borderland has become very lively. The new floating sky city has not yet been completed, and most of the monks are resting in a ground defense fortress. Talking about the previous battle with the Five Old Men's Association, the monks are still extremely excited. 953. Free Trade State. Li Fan, having subtly changed his appearance, sat in a corner, carefully listening to the conversations of the cultivators within the fortress. Have you heard? The Immortal Alliance seems to have abandoned the idea of building a sky city in this nine-mountain state. Oh, what do you mean by that? It's all because of the unstable spatial properties here. Although the Celestial Venerable's avatar plowed through Nine-Mountain State completely, it didn't change the spatial characteristics. Teleportation arrays still can't be used reliably. Upon hearing this, the cultivators present suddenly understood. No sky city will be built. Then such a large piece of land, the Myriad Immortal Alliance can't just ignore it, right? Hard to say. Before, they could rely on the natural advantages of the Nine Mountains to build cities against the mountains. Now it's all flat, with no natural defenses at all. The most crucial thing is that teleportation arrays can't be used. Once surrounded, they can't get quick support. Both the defense costs and the effectiveness are too poor. You guys don't know anything. The Five Old Ones Society was beaten by our Myriad Immortal Alliance to the point of personally coming to beg for peace. Do you think they would dare to actively invade? What danger could there be? This fellow Taoist is too naive. Haven't you heard that the balance of power is never constant? How can you judge heroes based on temporary victories or defeats? The last victory was only because our Myriad Immortal Alliance launched a surprise attack. In my opinion, if the two sides fight again, the outcome is still unknown. You weren't saying that when our Myriad Immortal Alliance was defeated before. The cultivators inside the fortress were very enthusiastic about discussing the situation in the Xuanwang world. Each held their own views, arguing endlessly, and no one would yield to anyone else. It was quite lively. Li Fan observed the surroundings and found that, besides himself, there was another cultivator who was just listening attentively and not participating in the discussion. This person looked to be in his 30s, wearing a black robe with silver white hair tied up. Listening to the discussions, a hint of disdain appeared in his eyes. Clearly, he didn't quite agree with the views of the cultivators present. Li Fan smiled slightly, bought a pot of fine spiritual wine, and sat down in front of him. How do I address you, Taoist friend? Li Fan asked with a smile, pouring a cup for the silver-haired cultivator. The silver-haired cultivator was still full of vigilance regarding Li Fan's unprovoked attentiveness. He didn't answer Li Fan's question, but instead narrowed his eyes, constantly sizing up the self-invited cultivator in front of him. Taoist friend, there's no need to be suspicious. I could tell at a glance that you possess extraordinary bearing, unlike ordinary people, and have profound thoughts in your mind. I'm also very curious about the future situation of Nine Mountain State, so I wanted to take the liberty of asking for your opinion. The silver-haired cultivator looked at Li Fan's sincere face, hesitated for a long time, and finally lowered his guard. He drank the spiritual wine in one gulp and transmitted his voice. Hehe, you've come to the right person. My name is Xin Hongzong. When it comes to the timeliness of information, none of these people here can compare to me. Upon hearing this, Li Fan quickly poured another cup for Xin Hongzong. Xin Hongzong was very satisfied with Li Fan's attitude and transmitted his voice. Seeing as you and I are destined, I'll reveal some things to you. But remember not to spread it around. Li Fan nodded repeatedly. Actually, those people are right. The Myriad Immortal Alliance indeed doesn't plan to build a sky city in Nine Mountain State. But that doesn't mean the Immortal Alliance is going to give up on this place. On the contrary, the Immortal Alliance has decided to establish the first free trade zone in history here. Oh, a free trade zone? Seeing the other party's earnest manner, Li Fan couldn't help but become genuinely interested. What's that about? Xin Hongzong said triumphantly. You know about the Myriad Dharma Chamber of Commerce, right? The Five Old Ones Society and the Myriad Immortal Alliance have been opposed for many years, mutually prohibiting the circulation of each other's goods. The Nine Mountain States Myriad Dharma Chamber of Commerce is located in the buffer zone between the two, and neither the Myriad Immortal Alliance nor the Five Old Ones Society can control it. Thus, the Myriad Dharma Chamber of Commerce can openly sell all kinds of rare treasures. Although they mark up the prices, cultivators still come from thousands of miles away to buy them in an endless stream. But all of that is ancient history. The celestial Venerable's avatar displayed its power, and the entire Nine Mountain State was razed to the ground. Although the Myriad Dharma Chamber of Commerce didn't completely die out, it suffered heavy losses. It will be difficult to be like before. Xin Hongzong shook his head. However, the leader of the Myriad Dharma Chamber of Commerce is indeed a character. He actually persuaded the Myriad Immortal Alliance to lift trade restrictions in this Nine Mountain State. Cultivators from both the Myriad Immortal Alliance and the Five Old Ones Society can freely trade the resources they need here. They only need to pay a small amount of tax. The Immortal Alliance is leading the effort, assisted by the experienced Myriad Dharma Chamber of Commerce. It is said that they have secretly reached an agreement with the Five Old Ones Society to ensure that even if war breaks out again in the future, neither side will choose to fight in Nine Mountain State. Speaking of which, do you know what a free trade with guaranteed safety means? Xin Hongzong stared at Li Fan. Li Fan nodded, his eyes revealing excitement. It's conceivable that the now desolate Nine Mountain State will soon become extremely prosperous. It might even surpass the four major states in the hinterland. If you can seize this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, you will definitely be able to defy fate and change your destiny. Xin Hongzong also took another heavy drink of spiritual wine, venting his inner excitement. If it weren't for this reason, why would I come to this remote borderland from thousands of miles away? Li Fan lowered his head and remained silent for a long time, seemingly digesting this shocking news. Then, he raised his head, filled with gratitude, and said to Xin Hongzong, "Such important inside information, Taoist friend, you actually just told a stranger you met by chance." Xin Hongzong waved his hand. Hehe, if you hadn't taken the initiative to strike up a conversation and ordered a pot of good wine, I wouldn't have told you about this. Actually, this isn't really a top secret. The Immortal Alliance's announcement should be coming out soon. You and I can only seize a little bit of an advantage. By the way, Taoist friend, if you have plenty of contribution points on hand, you might want to keep an eye on the qualification to purchase cave dwellings in Nine Mountain State recently. I dare to bet that within 10 years, the price of cave dwellings here will increase by at least double. It might even increase by 3 or 4 times. If you can buy a few cave dwellings at the beginning, and then sell them later. It's simply a business with guaranteed profits. Xin Hongzong secretly transmitted his voice again. Taoist Xin is truly farsighted. Li Fan looked as if he had just woken up from a dream, and patted his head. How could I not have thought of that? Then he continued to flatter him incessantly. Having drunk too much spiritual wine, and listening to Li Fan's flattery, Xin Hongzong couldn't help but feel a little lightheaded. Suddenly, he saw that Li Fan seemed to be hesitating about something. Finally, as if having made up his mind, he mysteriously transmitted his voice. Taoist Xin has treated me so well, I can't be stingy either. To tell you the truth, I have a secret technique called Divine Advent. If Taoist friend doesn't mind, I can pass it on to you. Seeing Li Fan so serious, Xin Hongzong smiled, not taking it seriously. 954. The Temptation of Ghosts and Gods. I see that your cultivation is only at the nascent soul stage, so how powerful can your secret technique be? Shin Hongzong shook his head slightly. I'm telling you this secret, not seeking anything in return. You should keep that divine advent for yourself. Upon hearing this, Li Fan's expression immediately turned somewhat unpleasant. He seemed about to explode, but in the end, he patiently explained, fellow Taoist Shin, don't underestimate me just because I'm only at the nascent soul stage. The divine advent I summon is even stronger than me. It can even withstand a transformation god cultivator or two. Shin Hongzong's expression turned serious upon hearing this. If fellow Taoist doesn't believe me, we can test it out, Li Fan said sincerely. Shin Hongzong, slightly sobered up, carefully observed Li Fan again. He indeed only has a nascent soul cultivation. Even if he has malicious intentions, I can easily kill him. Very well, let's see what he's up to. Not sensing any malice from Li Fan, only sincerity, Shin Hongzong pondered for a moment and agreed to Li Fan's suggestion. The two of them left the defensive fortress one after the other. They flew to a deserted place in Nine Mountains Prefecture. Brother Fan, I think this place is good enough. Let me witness your so-called divine advent, Shin Hongzong suddenly stopped and said to Li Fan. Li Fan looked around and nodded, all right, fellow Taoist Shin, stay away. I'm afraid I might accidentally injure you. Shin Hongzong sneered in his heart, but still did as he was told. He watched with interest as Li Fan looked serious and chanted, red dust compassion, blessings for the world. As I pray, the divine body descends. By decree, he's really putting on a show, Shin Hongzong thought. But soon, sensing the appearance of a strange and powerful aura, the playfulness in Shin Hongzong's heart instantly disappeared. Replaced by extreme solemnity. This is. A monster with a goat head and a human body appeared before Shin Hongzong, summoned by the Taoist named Fan Li. The monster's eyes were tightly closed, but Shin Hongzong felt a sense of being locked on. Shadow and light appeared simultaneously on the goat-headed, human-bodied monster. It looked strange and sacred at the same time. Fellow Taoist Shin, what do you think? Li Fan's voice came. Shin Hongzong woke up from his shock. He didn't answer, but instead assessed the strength of the monster before him. The other party seemed to see through his thoughts and slowly said, looking won't do any good. Fellow Taoist Shin, are you interested in sparring with my divine advent? Shin Hongzong narrowed his eyes and nodded in agreement. Then fellow Taoist Shin, be careful. Li Fan shouted softly. The goat-headed monster disappeared in an instant, and the next moment, it appeared behind Shin Hongzong. This speed. Before he could be shocked, Shin Hongzong felt the monster's large hands tightly strangle his neck from behind. Before he could break free, the scene before Shin Hongzong suddenly changed. It was as if he had fallen into an endless ghost realm, with 5 blood moons intertwined in the sky. Surrounding him were thousands upon thousands of terrifying demon gods, casting their gazes upon him. Under the terrifying and oppressive atmosphere, Shin Hongzong's thoughts seemed to freeze in an instant. He completely gave up resisting, allowing himself to be at their mercy. Fellow Taoist Shin, it wasn't until Li Fan's call that he woke up from the nightmare. You, Shin Hongzong looked around and found that the goat-headed monster had disappeared. He looked at Li Fan with suspicion, hesitating to speak. How is the strength of this divine advent? Li Fan said triumphantly. Shin Hongzong was silent for a moment, and finally uttered 4 words, I am inferior. It's okay, this secret technique doesn't have any restrictions against being practiced by multiple people. If fellow Taoist is interested, I can pass it on to you, Li Fan said seriously. Having personally experienced the terrifying power of the divine advent, Shin Hongzong subconsciously wanted to agree. But then he thought of the dark ghost realm he had seen, and Shin Hongzong couldn't help but hesitate. This secret technique seemed a bit evil. Moreover, this incredible magical technique was being given away for free. Doubts arose in Shin Hongzong's heart. Seeming to see through Shin Hongzong's concerns, Li Fan smiled, pulled him down to the ground, and explained. Actually, I have some selfish motives for wanting to pass on the divine advent to you. Oh, Shin Hongzong's heart stirred, and he looked at Li Fan. It all starts with the origin of this secret technique. It is said that in ancient times, gods and demons wreaked havoc in the world. We humans were merely the food of the gods and demons, with a tragic fate. A sage with a compassionate heart was born, made a great vow, and vowed to suppress all the gods and demons in the world and restore peace to the world. Are you saying that the goat-headed monster you just summoned was an ancient god and demon that was suppressed? Shin Hongzong's expression was a little strange. Li Fan nodded. Although the sage suppressed all the gods and demons in the world, the gods and demons are immortal and indestructible. To prevent them from escaping, the sage used his body as a prison to suppress them forever. And to prevent himself from weakening after tens of thousands of years, he left behind a secret technique. All those who practice the divine advent can use their bodies to suppress infinite gods and demons. In return, they can summon projections of the gods and demons in the holy prison to fight for them. Shin Hongzong felt a little dizzy listening to this. Compassionate sages, gods and demons, he had never heard of any of this. It was completely contrary to his previous worldview, making it difficult to believe. Li Fan continued. Originally, I was like you, thinking this was too absurd. But after truly practicing this secret technique and successfully summoning a projection of a god and demon, I understood. This secret technique is not a native secret technique of the Xuanwang world. The events recorded are not events that happened in the Xuanwang world. However, the power of the secret technique is indeed real and effective. Shin Hongzong suddenly understood upon hearing this. Moreover, this secret technique has a characteristic. Each person who practices the secret technique has a unique identifier. After passing the secret technique to others, this identifier will not disappear. Instead, it will benefit from the next person who practices the secret technique, summoning more and stronger projections of gods and demons. These words were a bit mysterious, and Shin Hongzong didn't understand the specific meaning for a while. But soon, Li Fan explained it with practical actions. For example, 3 evil and terrifying demon gods instantly appeared around Shin Hongzong. Surrounding him, contaminated by endless demonic energy, Shin Hongzong swallowed his saliva, too nervous to move. I have already passed this secret technique to more than a dozen destined people, so the number of gods and demons I can summon has also been upgraded to 3. The more cultivators you pass it on to, the more gods and demons you can summon. This is why I don't mind, and even very much want to pass on this divine advent secret technique to you. Li Fan said with a smile. Shin Hongzong looked at the 3 majestic demon gods around him and couldn't help but feel his heart pound. 955. Gods and demons appear in the world. Who would refuse such an easy opportunity to obtain a demon god projection stronger than their own combat power? Shin Hongzong was about to agree when, at the critical moment, he seemed to be blessed with sudden inspiration and looked at Li Fan again. So, what's the price? How could there be such a pie in the sky good thing in this world? Seeing that the other party was still resisting, Li Fan smiled again, bewitching him. Price. That merciful and compassionate saint, who could have achieved a transcendent realm above immortality, is now forced to transform his body into a prison, suppressing thousands of gods and demons. Isn't that a price in itself? It's just that the saint is compassionate, taking all the calamities upon himself for our sake. If those gods and demons were still rampant, summoning them would surely require sacrificing one's own divine soul. If you are truly grateful, you only need to praise the saint's benevolence every day. With Li Fan's explanation, everything made sense. All the doubts in Shin Hongzong's heart were dispelled, and he couldn't help but ask, I wonder what the saint's name is. You will know once you have learned the open black lens bracket divine advent close black lens bracket, Li Fan said, gently pointing towards Shin Hongzong. The contents of this unfathomable secret technique of gods and demons instantly flooded Shin Hongzong's mind like a tide. It truly is an supreme wonderful method, truly extraordinary. Merely from the lines of text, Shin Hongzong was able to glimpse the profound mysteries of open black lens bracket divine advent close black lens bracket. Compared to the spells he had practiced before in his life, it was like comparing mud to clouds, heaven and earth. He was immersed in the wonderful method, unable to extricate himself. When Shin Hongzong regained consciousness, Li Fan had already disappeared without a trace. Saving from suffering and hardship, compassion in the mortal world, Shin Hongzong muttered to himself. Having obtained the secret technique, the first thing to do was naturally find a place to cultivate. Shin Hongzong suppressed the excitement in his heart and returned to the 9-mountain state fortress. He spent a lot of money to rent a cultivation chamber with the highest level of secrecy. Shin Hongzong sat cross-legged inside, cultivating according to the methods described in open black lens bracket divine advent close black lens bracket. Darkness quietly descended upon the secret chamber. Shin Hongzong seemed to have returned to the boundless ghost realm where the thousands of demon gods resided. However, unlike the terrifying scene he had seen before, filled with yin winds and ghostly wails, this ghost realm seemed to be in a state of absolute stillness. Above the thousands of gods and demons, a vague figure of a compassionate saint could be faintly seen, emitting rays of warm light. The fear in Shin Hongzong's heart gradually dissipated, and with excitement and reverence, he respectfully bowed towards the figure in the sky. Then, his divine sense drifted among the thousands of gods and demons, constantly sensing. As he flew past one of the demon statues, his heart suddenly stirred. He chanted something in his mouth, and the next moment, the demon statue suddenly opened its eyes. The still ghost realm shattered with a bang. In reality, a majestic demon god with 8 heads and 8 arms appeared before Shin Hongzong. It's actually open black lens bracket Shida Luo close black lens bracket. Shin Hongzong was instantly ecstatic. According to the secret technique, Shida Luo's strength was ranked among the top 100 of the thousands of demon gods. He never expected to have such good luck. Shin Hongzong tried to communicate with the demon god projection in front of him using his divine sense. A dark, viscous sensation extended along his divine sense into his sea of consciousness. Shin Hongzong was startled, but soon, the feeling of being able to control Shida Luo as easily as his own limbs dispelled his worries. He manipulated Shida Luo to attack, and Shin Hongzong couldn't hide the joy on his face. This demon god is even stronger than fellow Taoist Fan Li's 3 as soon as it's summoned. If I pass on the open black lens bracket divine advent close black lens bracket to other cultivators. Shin Hongzong was instantly lost in reverie. Don't want mediocre talents, don't want arrogant people, don't want those without conscience. Shin Hongzong remembered the selection criteria that Fan Li had told him, and began to think about suitable candidates. At the same time, thousands of miles away, Li Fan, who had a clear view of Shin Hongzong's expression through Shida Luo, revealed a satisfied smile. The so-called thousands of gods and demons were naturally the incarnations of thoughts formed by Li Fan's cultivation of the open black lens bracket 3 calamities 100 tribulations bright god method close black lens bracket. The divine advent secret technique was actually using the cultivator's own body as a petri dish, summoning Li Fan's thought incarnations to reside within. It seemed that they could be manipulated at will, but in reality, the thought incarnations were reading the cultivator's consciousness and acting spontaneously. It was equivalent to Li Fan lodging a part of his consciousness in other cultivators, using their divine sense to nourish and strengthen it. Weaving wedding clothes for others, without them even knowing. This was the fate of cultivating the open black lens bracket divine advent close black lens bracket. Now, my divine sense is even stronger than that of a Tao integration expert. If I use this method, with thousands upon thousands of cultivators becoming the breeding ground for my divine thoughts, the intensity will expand 1,000 or 100,000 times. Truly an unexpected harvest. Moreover, even better, my thought incarnations residing in these cultivators, seas of consciousness can subtly influence and change their thinking, making them completely available for my use. Ha ha ha, Li Fan couldn't help but let out a dark, low laugh. He seemed to already see that a large number of cultivators in the Myriad Immortals Alliance would fall into the trap of this divine advent secret technique. Widespread dissemination will definitely attract the attention of the Myriad Immortals Alliance. The characteristics are already so obvious. As long as Mo Rubin knows about this, he will definitely be able to see that this is the work of a former Xuantian sect comrade. What I need to do is to plant more seeds. Li Fan's figure flashed, and he flew away from Nine Mountain State. Next, he returned to the various states of the Myriad Immortals Alliance. After quietly bewitching a total of 80 cultivators to practice the open black lens bracket divine advent close black lens bracket, he finally stopped. Including the initial Shin Hongzong, there were 81 cultivators in the first batch. That kid is moving quite quickly. He already has second-generation cultivators. Li Fan sensed for a moment and was very satisfied with Shin Hongzong's efficiency. At most half a year, the number will be quite considerable. It's almost here, it's almost here. Li Fan returned with satisfaction. During the time he was diligently planting seeds, as Shin Hongzong had said, the Myriad Immortals Alliance released an announcement that it would build the first free trade state in Nine Mountain State. For a time, the world was in an uproar. Countless cultivators who yearned for the Five Elders Association, as well as those who attempted to get rich and turn over a new leaf, flocked to Nine Mountain State. Along with the announcement, there were also many detailed rules, including the development plan for Nine Mountain State in the next 100 years, as well as the rules for the distribution of resources and power, and so on. The most eye-catching of these was one item: ordinary cultivators are not qualified to purchase cave dwellings and plots of land in Nine Mountain State. Only those who have made outstanding contributions to the development of Nine Mountain State have this right. Furthermore, in order to prevent dignitaries from secretly using means, all land transactions must be published through the heavenly profound mirror. If there is any behind-the-scenes manipulation, any cultivator can report it. The Myriad Immortals Alliance will investigate to the end and will never tolerate it. 956. The Secrets of the Sleeves. All sorts of policies show that the Myriad Immortals Alliance attaches great importance to Nine Mountain State. At the very least, the wording of the clauses did indeed make all the monks in the Immortal Alliance feel that determination. More importantly, the one who issued the decree and presided over the construction of Nine Mountain State was Zhang, the transmitter who had previously successfully led the Myriad Immortals Alliance to a great victory over the Five Old Ones. As the only transmitter well known to the public, and with the previous major victory as a foundation, Transmitter Yang's reputation in the hearts of the Immortal Alliance monks is extremely high, almost second only to the celestial Venerable transmitter. If the Nine Mountains Free Trade State is successfully built and has significant results, then this Transmitter Yang's reputation will probably go even further. It's really interesting. Is it a representative collectively put forward by the transmitters, or the actual leaders of the Myriad Immortals Alliance are divided into two forces, the transmitters and the Celestial Mystery Mirror. Now the transmitters are making frequent moves and are even trying to create the profound heaven-sealing spirit to completely gain control of the Celestial Mystery Mirror. Is the Celestial Mystery Mirror side just sitting still and waiting for death? The so-called Great Wind arises from the end of the Qingping grass. In the Myriad Immortals Alliance, very few people can see the internal struggle of the high-level Immortal Alliance through the lively appearance of Nine Mountain State. Li Fan is one of them. However, no matter what the result, he doesn't really care. With the help of the Nine Mountain State craze, the rapid growth of the Divine Advent Body organization is what he cares more about. However, the Myriad Immortals Alliance has always had a strong control over its own territory. When more and more monks have mastered the divine demon projection of nascent soul and even God transformation strength, this abnormal phenomenon has attracted the attention of the Immortal Alliance officials. However, after all, no one has violated the Immortal Alliance laws, so they have not temporarily taken action against those monks. They just dispatched some Dharma Protector Hall monks to also start practicing Divine Advent Body, trying to find out the secret behind it. When one of the monks summoned a divine demon, and Li Fan's thought incarnation wanted to sneak into the other party's sea of consciousness, Li Fan found that this monk actually wanted to follow the source of the thought incarnation and peep Li Fan. Really not knowing the immensity of heaven and earth, Li Fan sneered and did not stop the other party. Instead, he carefully arranged it and then lead him over. So, what Wei Ziguan, a Dharma Protector Hall monk, saw after the initial surprise faded was an extremely real scene. The black sun appeared in the sky of the profound yellow world, engulfing everything. Countless living beings cried, but they didn't have time to react at all. They all disappeared into that endless darkness. The profound yellow world was shattered, and the people were plunged into misery. This terrifying doomsday scene poured into Wei Ziguan's mind without warning. Not an illusion, the expressions on the faces of every monk who was in disaster were extremely real. It was as if the end of the world really happened before his eyes. Ah, Wei Ziguan went crazy. He only had the golden core cultivation base, and he had not been 100 years since he practiced. He had a smooth journey. How had he ever seen such a purgatory scene? Disconnecting from the peep, Wei Ziguan, who returned to reality, could not stop screaming. Looking like a lunatic, he kept talking about the end of the world was coming. His colleagues quickly controlled him. After reporting it, the monk who came to check after understanding Wei Ziguan's experience also frowned and his face was gloomy. Realizing the seriousness of the matter, the monk ordered people to put Wei Ziguan under surveillance, and then hurriedly returned. Similar incidents in various parts of the Immortal Alliance are not just one. After the reports from various places were gathered and reported, it finally caused shock among the high-level officials of the Immortal Alliance. However, this matter is quite strange, and it is difficult to say whether it is a secret conspiracy from the Five Old Ones. Therefore, before the final decision came out, the Immortal Alliance suspended the investigation of Divine Advent Body. Just ordered various places to secretly control all the monks who practiced Divine Advent Body. But with Li Fan, the initiator, constantly continuing to spread the seeds. This move by the Myriad Immortals Alliance is a drop in the bucket. The Divine Advent Body organization continues to grow as always. Li Fan, who had successfully bewitched a monk again, suddenly felt a sense of pique for no reason. It was as if he had directly found Li Fan's location through heaven and earth. Fortunately, Li Fan has always changed his appearance when he goes out. So the real identity was not exposed. With a cold snort, Li Fan gently pointed to the sky. The sharp kendo cut off the source of secretly peep. But just for a moment, his position seemed to be locked. A thin line suddenly fell from the sky, and after that, the roaring sound came from afar. Sky Patrol Arrow. The Myriad Immortals Alliance obviously attaches great importance to Li Fan, the person who's secretly sowing the evil. Not one, but 3 consecutive Sky Patrol arrows locked Li Fan one after another. Even Tao integration monks will have to pay a heavy price in this situation. But Li Fan was not afraid. I saw that his eyes were bright, and he waved his sleeves towards the Sky Patrol arrow that was about to fly in front of him. In a blink of an eye, the 3 Sky Patrol arrows that broke through the air and seemed to tear everything disappeared for no reason. Li Fan showed a disdainful smile, and then flew away and left this place in an instant. When a team of fully armed Immortal Alliance monks arrived late and figured out what happened, their faces were filled with unconcealed fear. In the space channel leading to the Empire's small world. Li Fan frowned slightly, looking at the Sky Patrol arrow raging in his 5 elements great cave heaven. The trick of the beggar version, universe in the sleeves, was indeed handsome. But after all, it is a weapon that can seriously injure the Tao integration. Forcing it into one's own cave heaven will naturally pay a great price. The cave heaven rumbled and trembled slightly. The water, fire, and earth cave heavens, because of the attack of the Sky Patrol arrow, even had faint cracks in the sky. Fortunately, there are still the gold and wood cave heavens to support, and Li Fan personally took action to help suppress with colorful divine light. In the end, these 3 Sky Patrol arrows were completely subdued by Li Fan. The 5 elements flowed, but in an instant, the impact of the Sky Patrol arrow disappeared. Li Fan was holding a Sky Patrol arrow, quietly studying it. I don't know what material it is made of, it is extremely hard. Even if Li Fan used the extinction sword to bombard it, it could still keep the arrow body intact. Many complex patterns are engraved on the arrow. After Li Fan analyzed it with the ultimate disintegration disc, he obtained 100,000 superimposed complex formations. Most of them are formations that Li Fan has never learned, and even do not exist in the disintegration disk's own deduction database. It is very different from the formation system of the profound yellow world itself. It seems to come from another world of immortal cultivation. This is a great tonic for the disintegration disk. Li Fan was overjoyed. Sure enough, the fastest way to progress is to structure existing unknown creations. 957. Dao Yisheng Spiritual Qi. Li Fan sped through the spatial passage. Just before reaching the Imperial Small World, the Annihilation Disk had already completely absorbed, transformed, and deciphered all 100,000 formations on the Sky Patrol arrow. Li Fan paused slightly, his eyes shooting out a beam of silver light, instantly erasing all the formations attached to the surface of the Sky Patrol arrow. These 100,000 formations not only had functions such as acceleration, positioning, and amplification, but they also formed a layer of armor when stacked upon each other. This made the Sky Patrol arrow's hardness reach an unbelievable level. However, with the disappearance of these formations, the Sky Patrol arrow revealed the original material of its internal core. Only then did Li Fan discover that this Sky Patrol arrow seemed to be a living thing. Beneath a layer of hard keratin, faint fluctuations of divine consciousness emanated. The fluctuations were extremely weak. If Li Fan's soul strength wasn't even higher than that of an ordinary Tao integration cultivator, and his perception extremely sharp, he would have almost overlooked it. What is this thing? Li Fan couldn't help but become interested. He separated a wisp of equally tiny divine consciousness, attempting to communicate with the Sky Patrol arrow. But the Sky Patrol arrow seemed to be frightened, and almost instantly retracted its own divine consciousness fluctuations, showing no signs of life again. This scene was very similar to a frightened turtle, quickly retracting into its shell. After that, no matter how Li Fan probed, the Sky Patrol arrow resolutely did not reveal any signs of life. Helpless, Li Fan had no choice but to temporarily put it into his own grotto heaven, leaving a wisp of divine consciousness to observe it at all times. He would wait for it to lower its guard before doing anything else. No wonder the Myriad Immortals Alliance was able to achieve coverage with thousands of Sky Patrol arrows in a short period of time. So it's just unknown living things, stacked with compound formations. There should also be a central control hub to coordinate all the Sky Patrol arrows. Remembering the scene of the giant net woven by the Sky Patrol arrows during the battle between the Myriad Immortals Alliance and the Five Elders Council, Li Fan pondered to himself. Now that I have completely deciphered the compound formations, if I can also analyze the nature of this living thing, I can also mass-produce Sky Patrol arrows. Whether it's for my own use or selling the secret to the Five Elders Council, it would be greatly beneficial. In a good mood, Li Fan didn't get carried away. Looking at the Imperial small world not far away, he didn't directly reveal his figure. Instead, he first carefully searched with his divine consciousness, ensuring that the Imperial side hadn't set up any traps, before activating his power. Under the blessing of the soul-burning art, 5 rounds of eerie blood moons instantly descended upon the sky of the Imperial small world. Darkness descended, and the original sun was obscured. Terrifying gods and demons flew out of the blood moons. Soon, they occupied every location in the Empire. The supreme yin and dark aura emanating from their bodies caused the Empire's mortals to even have their thoughts frozen. They didn't even have the thought of fear, they were all just stiff in place. The realm of ghosts descended upon the Empire, and Li Fan's indifferent voice echoed continuously. The 3-year period has arrived. How is the matter I entrusted to you? His voice was like thunder, spreading throughout the entire Empire. At this moment, everyone in the Empire was plunged into extreme fear. It was as if they had personally witnessed countless gods and demons easily tearing the Empire apart. After a moment, Qing and Hong, as well as the Imperial daughter, flew to Li Fan's presence. Greetings, Senior. Compared to the last time, the aura Li Fan exuded was more than a notch stronger. The 3 of them could only barely maintain their freedom of movement. Fortunately, we have not failed our mission. In these 3 years, we have exhausted the power of the entire nation and finally completed the upgrade of the spiritual energy synthesis technology. In the end, Qing still mustered the courage to reply. Li Fan's gaze locked onto her, causing Qing's heart to stagnate. Ha 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 ha, very good, take me to see it. However, after a moment, Li Fan's laughter made her breathe a sigh of relief. They came all the way to the treasure vault of the Imperial Palace. In the original location of the open black lens bracket myriad manifestations furnace close black lens bracket, there was now a huge machine. The appearance was like an hourglass, and you could even hear something seeming to drip from the top of the hourglass to the bottom. Senior, please take a look. Qing pressed a button on the hourglass device. The ticking sound became more and more rapid. When it was about to reach a certain point, the bottom of the hourglass suddenly opened a small opening. Then a stream of pure spiritual energy spurted out from this small opening. Due to the extremely high concentration of spiritual energy, it initially formed spiritual rain. Then it slowly turned into white mist and dissipated into the air. Li Fan reached out and captured a wisp of spiritual energy. Apart from the faint bloody smell that was still mixed in, it was almost no different from natural spiritual energy. However, even so, compared to the spiritual energy catalyzed from the flesh and blood of exotic beasts before, the quality was much stronger. After spurting out a burst of spiritual energy, the ticking sound of the metal hourglass almost disappeared. It took a long time for the sound of dripping to appear. But Li Fan noticed that as time went on, the frequency of the ticking sound was getting higher and higher. It seemed that as long as it reached the previous speed again, new spiritual energy would be ejected. Divine consciousness penetrated the metal hourglass. After entering the interior, Li Fan found that the upper half of the hourglass was filled with countless tiny flesh and blood tissues. No, rather than saying they were like flesh and blood, they were more like a collection of certain types of fungi. The blood energy was very weak, and even self-awareness did not exist. Their only mission was to absorb nutrients and reproduce themselves. Interesting. Qing observed his expression, and at this time, she also explained to Li Fan appropriately, the previous spiritual energy could only be produced from the beast cores in the bodies of specific exotic beasts. From birth to the gestation of the crystal core, exotic beasts generally had to go through at least half a year. This is still under the circumstances that we have already compressed the breeding cycle to the extreme. But even so, the efficiency of producing spiritual energy is still too low. So we changed our thinking and carried out directional evolutionary cultivation of those exotic beasts. We degenerated all other functions and only retained the functional part of producing beast cores. Then, we integrated the characteristics of a fungal exotic beast with the fastest reproduction speed. After hundreds of generations of iterative cultivation, we finally obtained this almost perfect creation. Qing's tone was steady, but when it came to their research results, there was still uncontrollable excitement in her eyes. As Senior sees, this exotic beast has started its own reproduction since its birth. Skipping the open black lens bracket reproduction close black lens bracket process, it can reproduce infinitely entirely by self-replication. Moreover, the nutrients required are only the same as ordinary fungi, water and sunlight are enough. After the crystal core is born in the body, this exotic beast will die on its own, and the flesh and crystal core will separate. The crystal cores are centrally collected to the lower funnel, and the corpses of the exotic beasts are decomposed and retransformed into nutrients, which are absorbed by their kind. Thus, it circulates. This device only needs to add a little nutrient for a fixed period of time, and it can continuously produce spiritual energy. 958. The 10,000 worlds reveal their initial forms. After listening to Qing's introduction, Li Fan carefully observed the complete operation of the hourglass. He couldn't help but feel a surge of joy in his heart. Under the pressure of national subjugation and racial extinction, this group of people in the empire had indeed unleashed unimaginable potential. Li Fan had not expected that they could create such a near-perfect device. Even with Li Fan's discerning eyes, it was difficult to find any flaws in this device. Neither this alien beast nor the hourglass device has a name yet. Please, Senior, bestow upon them names. After Qing finished speaking, she gestured with her eyes. The imperial daughter bowed and then said softly, "Hee hee." Li Fan smiled. Even knowing their little thoughts, Li Fan was extremely pleased at this moment. After pondering for a moment, Li Fan had an answer in his heart. In the beginning of heaven and earth, there was the division of yin and yang. The combination of yin and yang gives rise to all things. And as it is said, the Tao gives birth to one gives birth to two gives birth to three, and three gives birth to all things. This alien beast can be named open black lens bracket Tao 1 insect close black lens bracket. This device, Li Fan paused slightly, and then said loudly, can be named open black lens bracket heaven and earth furnace close black lens bracket. The three imperial daughters exchanged glances, their eyes full of surprise. Thank you, Senior, for bestowing the names, they said in unison. Next, Li Fan learned more details about the open black lens bracket heaven and earth furnace close black lens bracket. The forging of the furnace itself was not difficult. With enough resources, producing tens of thousands of cauldrons a day was not a problem. Just guide a portion of the open black lens bracket Tao 1 insect close black lens bracket into the new blank furnace, inject nutrients, and wait for 10 days. The heaven and earth furnace could then continuously produce spiritual energy. The only possible hidden danger is that the Tao 1 insect will mutate during its self-proliferation process. The probability of mutation is extremely small, and the direction is uncertain. But in any case, it will cause the heaven and earth furnace to malfunction. Moreover, since the Tao 1 insect has now been directionally cultivated to a state of extreme structural simplicity, it is not competitive compared to any of its variant species. Therefore, they will always be replaced by those newly mutated bodies. In order to ensure that the Tao 1 insect always remains in the optimal spiritual energy production state, once a mutated individual is found in the furnace, it must be completely exterminated. At the same time, it is recommended to make more backup cultures of the original Tao 1 insect to avoid large-scale mutations and extinction events. It must be said that there is no perfect thing in the world. Even after hundreds of generations of improvement, this shortcoming of the Tao 1 insect has never been eliminated. But then again, compared to the benefits they can bring, these shortcomings are almost negligible. It's just that the heaven and earth furnace has to be replaced every once in a while. It can't even be considered a shortcoming. The furnace is sealed with a secret method, and outsiders cannot open it. After a period of time, the furnace will fail. If you want to use it again, you have to find a new furnace. Isn't this the perfect means of control? Even if it is promoted to the heavens and myriad worlds, it can greatly reduce the risk of being out of control. In an instant, Li Fan deduced various possible outcomes, and the joy in his heart grew stronger. But he did not show it on his face. After putting away several heaven and earth furnaces, Li Fan looked at the three imperial daughters. After a suffocating silence, Very good. I am very satisfied with your performance this time. Our Myriad Worlds Association has always been fair in rewards and punishments. How can we not reward you for your great contribution this time? From today onwards, your empire will officially become a member of the Myriad Worlds Association. As he spoke, a phantom of a faceless stone statue appeared in front of the three women. After guiding them to complete the oath in front of the stone statue, Li Fan taught them the open black lens bracket divine advent close black lens bracket technique. With the protection of the demon gods, it is enough to deal with the various crises that may occur in your empire on weekdays. The three women were all gifted, and under Li Fan's witness, they each summoned their own demon god in a short while. Feeling the powerful aura of the demon gods, the three couldn't help but feel a little surprised. This is just the most basic reward. After I go back and report the gains this time, the association will issue many more rewards. Including but not limited to, the improvement of your cultivation, and the material support for the empire, and so on. If possible, you may even have the honor of going to the headquarters of the association. Li Fan was faintly drawing a big cake. By the way, as the small world that developed the Heaven and Earth Furnace, the association allows you to first realize the popularization in your own small world. Moreover, when there are Heaven and Earth Furnaces placed in other small worlds, you will also get a corresponding reward split. The corresponding reward materials will be settled once every 10 years, and uniformly sent to you here. Although the proportion will not be too large, it is definitely enough to build and upgrade your small world here. This was a completely unexpected gain, and the three of the empire were even more overjoyed. Remember, our association will never treat its own people badly. Anyone who makes a contribution to the association will be rewarded 1,000 times over. As if to prove this, Li Fan handed the three imperial daughters a storage ring. When Qing saw the materials contained in the storage ring, her pupils shrank. She quickly bowed to Li Fan to express her gratitude. Li Fan waved his hand, not taking it seriously. Your performance this time is better than I expected. Next, I have a task to give you. From the storage ring, Li Fan took out the Sky Patrol arrow, whose surface formation had been erased, leaving only the core dormant living thing. See if you can study the characteristics of this beast and realize its large-scale breeding. If you can do this, the association will greatly reward you. Li Fan said in a deep voice. His expression and tone revealed his importance to this thing. Qing solemnly took the Sky Patrol arrow, observed it, and showed a look of surprise. But she quickly stated, I will definitely not fail Senior's trust. After explaining some related matters, Li Fan left a jade talisman, indicating that they could communicate at any time. And quietly left the Empire's small world. Inside the Imperial Palace, Hong frowned slightly and looked at Zhao King. Qing, this thing seems a little familiar. Qing shook her head. It does look a bit like that thing in the sect back then. But it can't be determined yet. It needs to be studied further. After a moment of silence, Hong asked again, that Myriad Worlds Association, what do you think? We are the fish on the chopping board, what can we do? We can only take one step at a time. And judging from their current performance, the other party is not a great evil person. The Imperial Palace was quiet for a while. As if remembering something, Qing suddenly said, by the way, the demon god bestowed by Senior. Don't use it unless you have to. I always feel something is strange. Hong and the Imperial daughter both nodded silently. Li Fan, who had already returned to the Xuanwang realm, sensed the conversation of the women through the incarnation of the demon god's will. Li Fan smiled coldly. 959. The mission of the Heavenly Doctor. Those gods and demons were the embodiment of Li Fan's will, deeply rooted in his sea of consciousness the moment he mastered divine advent. Every action, even emotions and thoughts, were under Li Fan's control. How could they be avoided by simply not using them? It's normal to have some small thoughts, as long as they can be used for my purposes. The path of alien beasts still seems to have endless potential. Li Fan didn't care about the duplicity of the Empire and the others, because no matter what, they couldn't escape Li Fan's grasp. To test the effects of Heaven and Earth Furnace, Li Fan returned to the Spirit Wood realm and directly arrived at the Beast Seed realm through the spatial channel. He placed one of the finished products on the mountain peak and set up a protective formation around it. Then, he left a wisp of divine sense to observe the changes caused by the Heaven and Earth Furnace. The formation only prevented the alien beasts from damaging the furnace and would not affect the spread of the generated spiritual energy. Gradually, the high concentration of spiritual energy around this strange device on the mountain peak attracted the attention of the alien beasts on the mountain. Although most of them were low-level alien beasts that had not yet developed intelligence, their innate sensitivity to spiritual energy still caused them to swarm and squeeze in front of the heaven and earth furnace, greedily trying to absorb the pure spiritual energy as much as possible. Without cultivation methods, they couldn't actively absorb the spiritual energy into their bodies. Most of the spiritual energy still overflowed and spread around. 10 days passed, and this originally unremarkable small mountain suddenly became vibrant and full of life. At this rate, to transform a spiritless small world into one that meets the minimum requirements for cultivation, it would take about 100 heaven and earth furnaces continuously for 100 years. If there were 10,000, it could be done in a year. After obtaining the approximate data, Li Fan immediately summoned the treefolk race. With the continuous upgrading of the spirit wood realm and the feedback from Lin Ling's improved cultivation, the treefolk female patriarch's strength was also increasing day by day. She had now reached the late stage of transformation god realm, only one step away from Dao integration. Among the treefolk, those with core formation realm battle power were also emerging in large numbers. Compared to when Li Fan first took over the spirit wood realm, the strength of the entire race had undergone a qualitative leap. Therefore, the treefolk were extremely worshipful of Li Fan. The female patriarch came before Li Fan, bent her knees, knelt down, and kowtowed, saying, "Greetings, Venerable." Li Fan placed a heaven and earth furnace in front of the female patriarch and explained in detail how to forge it. From today onwards, use the strength of your entire race to refine this object. Within 3 years, I want all the small worlds connected to the spirit wood realm to become suitable for cultivation. The female patriarch immediately accepted the order and left. Soon after, looking at the busy treefolk, Li Fan nodded slightly. The tireless treefolk were really the most suitable for doing this kind of work. Moreover, with the continuous improvement of array refinement, the entire spirit wood realm was now under Li Fan's complete control. He could decide their life and death with a single thought, and there was no risk of them going out of control. A few days later, Tian Yang, who was bored, saw the actions of the treefolk and volunteered to take charge of this matter. He felt that refining the heaven and earth furnace well and then arranging them one by one in every corner of the small world was very much like planting trees and making forests. It was extremely interesting. With Tian Yang's help, Li Fan was even less worried. He taught Tian Yang the formation derived from the terminus disintegration disk, which was specially used to protect and connect all the heaven and earth furnaces, and Li Fan simply became a hands-off manager. Back then, he was able to use the earth-fire return to origin formation to refine his puppet body. Tian Yang's attainments in formations were already excellent. During this time, his mind became increasingly clear, and under Li Fan's personal guidance, he quickly mastered this formation completely. Li Fan asked Tian Yang to name this formation, and Tian Yang showed a simple and honest smile. Then, he pondered for a full 7 days and 7 nights before finally coming up with a good name: Heaven and Earth Myriad Spirits Grand Array. The Heaven and Earth Myriad Spirits Array could use all the deployed Heaven and Earth furnaces as nodes to form a spiritual power network spanning small worlds. When the Grand Array took initial shape, even if a certain node was damaged, it could replenish the missing spiritual energy through this spiritual power network, without causing a reduction in the overall spiritual energy concentration. In addition to spreading spiritual energy, this spiritual power network also had many functions such as monitoring, attacking, and defending. In Li Fan's vision, the final form of the Heaven and Earth Myriad Spirits Arrays should be a higher level than Profound Net, the ultimate creation that could create and evolve the immortal cultivation world on its own. Actually, it's just smaller in scale now, but it's already very close in essence. But it still needs a derivation and coordination core, such as the Heaven Profound Mirror. Only the Heaven Profound Mirror can support the envisioned scale of the Heaven and Earth Myriad Spirits Array. Apart from that, even my terminus disintegration disk won't work. Li Fan's thoughts surged, and he couldn't calm down for a long time. Suddenly, a sense of unease disrupted his thoughts. Li Fan's expression changed slightly, and his figure flashed, directly leaving the spirit wood realm. Soon after arriving in the Xuanwang realm, the voice of Heavenly Physician resounded in his mind. "I've finally found you. I've detected that the seal of the Cloudwater Heavenly Palace is loosening. To prevent outsiders from disturbing it, go and reinforce the seal." After Heavenly Physician finished speaking, a restriction called Hidden World Concealed Void appeared in Li Fan's mind. Heavenly Physician seemed to be very busy. Before Li Fan could respond, he was gone again. Li Fan was expressionless, but in fact, his heart sank. Anchoring in year 11, the Cloud-Water Heavenly Palace opens. I almost forgot about this. But what does Heavenly Physician mean by this errand? A test or something else? Li Fan wasn't too surprised that Heavenly Physician could directly lock onto and contact him. After all, he had met him face to face in this life and had also accepted the heaven-mending record he had transmitted. This was the price he had to pay for directly contacting Heavenly Physician. However, the lack of security still made him feel a little uncomfortable. Without thinking for long, Li Fan cupped his hands towards the sky, and then rushed towards the Kanyan Sea. Arriving at the center of Kanyan Sea, the location of the Cloud-Water Heavenly Palace. At this time, although the Cloud-Water Heavenly Palace had not yet officially appeared, there were already some anomalies appearing in the sky, attracting passing cultivators to stop and watch from time to time. Using the restriction transmitted by Heavenly Physician, Li Fan entered the interior silently. He was guarding against entering the illusion of senior brother Qin Tang, but he didn't expect to appear directly in front of the main gate of the Cloud-Water Heavenly Palace. He didn't enter senior brother Qin's illusion test. Not far away, the stone statue transformed from Qin Tang stood quietly, as if it had never changed. The entire Cloud-Water Heavenly Palace was also silent. It was as if all the strangeness within was in slumber. This was the first time Li Fan had seen the Cloud-Water Heavenly Palace in a sealed state, compared to the state he had seen before. At this time, the Cloud-Water Heavenly Palace gave Li Fan the feeling of just an ordinary sect where cultivators were resting. There was no sense of strangeness brought about by the complete destruction and the rampant anomalies. 960. The story of Yunshui in the past. The conflicting feelings made Li Fan frown slightly. Do they only collectively riot when they appear in the Xuanwang realm? While pondering, Li Fan walked past the Qin Tang stone statue and hurried towards the interior of the Yunshui Heavenly Palace. The area he was going to was one that Li Fan had never set foot in before, the residence of the Yunshui Heavenly Palace's sect master, which was also the location of Hanhai. With Li Fan's current perspective, recalling the battles within the Yunshui Heavenly Palace he had seen in the past, Hanhai was at most in the Hedao Peak realm and had not achieved immortality. Not to mention that he had already fallen and could only exist in a bizarre form. Therefore, Li Fan was not worried that there would be any danger on this trip. Li Fan was more concerned about whether Tianyi was currently lurking in some corner, spying on his every move. Soon, he arrived at the rearmost group of buildings in the Yunshui Heavenly Palace, where a blue protective sphere completely enveloped the area. The restriction that sealed the Yunshui Heavenly Palace began to take effect from here, spreading to the entire area. Li Fan observed for a moment and discovered that invisible shockwaves were constantly emanating from the blue sphere. It was because of the effect of the shockwaves that the restriction was gradually losing its effectiveness. Li Fan's expression was somewhat surprised. Having thoroughly studied open black lens bracket booty and Lu close black lens bracket, Li Fan quickly realized that this was because Hanhai, even in his slumber, was experiencing tremendous emotional shock. As a result, uncontrollable energy overflowed, releasing shockwaves outwards. Like Immortal's sleepwalking, strictly speaking, it was also a type of cultivator's ailment. Could it be that Tianyi guided me here to alleviate Hanhai's pain? It shouldn't be just a simple errand to strengthen the restriction seal. There must be a deeper meaning to this. After pondering for a moment, Li Fan made up his mind. He separated a wisp of extremely subtle, almost completely blank divine sense, and passed through the blue protective membrane, entering the interior of the sphere. A blue and white pearl was floating in midair. It was extremely similar to the Kanghai pearl, but with obvious differences. The round pearl was spinning rapidly, and on top of the blue and white, there was a trace of black, which was particularly glaring. Like a nightmare, it constantly entangled the blue and white pearl, unable to be dispelled. Hanhai's main body has disappeared, leaving only this pearl behind. After searching for a while and finding nothing else inside, Li Fan sighed slightly. It seems that the trace of black is the source of Hanhai's torment. Li Fan hesitated for a moment, but ultimately threw this wisp of divine sense into it. A burst of dizziness. It was as if he had entered the fallen immortal realm and was attached to a completely new body. Except that he could not control it and could only passively observe and experience the things that happened to this body. Venerable Tianyi has been gone for a long time, and I don't know if things will succeed. Hanhai sat upright in the main hall of the sect, with the turtle snake Tai, only the size of an ordinary turtle, muttering. Before Venerable Tianyi left, he said that there was at least a 90% certainty of success. You and I should have some faith in him. Unlike Tai's worried expression, Hanhai seemed very relaxed, smiling and comforting him. Tai shook his head slightly, curling both the turtle and snake into its shell. I can still live for another 100,000 years, so what am I afraid of? If it really doesn't work, I'll just find a pond and take a nap. All the tribulations will pass, what can be done to me? It's just that Qin Tang said that some other sects are already restless. Recently, they have begun to secretly spread the idea of surrendering. Hanhai snorted coldly. Those who speak of defeat before battle are scum, and Venerable Tianju will naturally deal with them. Tai smiled wryly. It's not really speaking of defeat before battle. It's just that after fighting for so long, everyone is almost exhausted. That's why they're forced to do so. If you ask me, they can't be entirely blamed. It's just that if this war continues, there's no hope to be seen. Hanhai shouted angrily, interrupting Tai, enough. How can you think that way too? We are in such a state, do you think the other side is doing any better? Now, it's a matter of who can persevere to the end. If we surrender at this time, then what's the point of the sacrifices of so many comrades before? Tai sighed slightly, remaining silent. The hall was deathly silent. After a long time, as if to ease the awkwardness between them, Tai took the initiative to speak again. Speaking of Venerable Tianju, I haven't seen him for a long time. Just then, a disciple's scream suddenly came from outside. Venerable, no, run, Venerable is crazy. The screams were so sudden that both Hanhai and Tai's expressions changed instantly. Without saying a word, they transformed into blue and black rays of light, one after the other, heading straight for the source of the screams. In the air, they saw a scene they would never forget. The Venerable Tianju they admired so much had his eyes closed. Holding the Tianxia sword, he wantonly slaughtered the disciples of the Yunshui Heavenly Palace. What was Venerable Tianju's cultivation level? Under his attacks, the disciples had no room to resist. Streaks of black sword light flashed past, mercilessly reaping the lives of his disciples. Hanhai's eyes were bloodshot, and he roared, "Stop!" A blue giant palm descended from the sky, slapping towards Tianju. Tianju didn't even look at Hanhai, and the Tianxia sword only released a sword light, tearing the blue giant palm apart. Then, the sword light did not diminish in power and attacked Hanhai. Careful! Tai transformed into its complete form, using its incomparably hard shell to block the black sword light. Boom! In the huge vibration, Tai spat out a mouthful of blood. Hanhai had also regained some sanity at this time. You hold back Tianju, I'll cover the disciples, retreat. After saying that, streaks of blue silk threads flew towards all parts of the Yunshui Heavenly Palace, wanting to save the disciples who were running away in all directions. But, just then, the Tianxia sword suddenly burst out with thousands of black rays of light. Arriving later but reaching first, it blocked all of Hanhai's rescue. The black light passed through every blue silk thread, Qian Yin them, and instantly returned to Hanhai's side. Then, before Hanhai could react, like black needles, it pinned him in midair. You are not Venerable Tianju. Although Hanhai could not move his limbs, he could still make a sound. His face was filled with horror. Who exactly are you? Hanhai roared angrily and desperately. That Venerable Tianju completely ignored Hanhai. With his eyes closed, he wielded the Tianxia sword, mercilessly reaping the lives of the remaining disciples of the Yunshui Heavenly Palace. And Hanhai, as the sect master, could only helplessly watch his disciples die tragically before his eyes one by one. No, no, when there was no longer any sign of life in the Yunshui Heavenly Palace except for them, Hanhai could not even utter a curse. His whole body trembled slightly, and tears of blood flowed from his eyes. Who, on earth, are you?